We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Andre Melly in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. I'm going to ask each person to try and speak for 60 seconds on some unlikely subject for just a minute, without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject in any way. If one of the others thinks they are guilty of one of these crimes, they may press their buzzer and challenge. If I uphold their challenge, I will give them a point, and they take over the subject. If I don't uphold their challenge, the person speaking gains a point and continues until the 60 seconds is up. That is the way we play, that is the way we score, and this week we're going to begin with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, a lovely subject for you to start with. What I most desire. Would you try and talk for 60 seconds on that subject, starting now?
Well, in common with so many other great people, it is, of course, utopian, in the sense that it is a paradise, an island somewhere where falls no rain, nor any snow, nor ever wind blows loudly, but it lies deep meadowed happy there, with orchard lawns and bowery hollows, crowned with summer sea, where I may heal me of my grievous wound, and my wound is grievous, for I have been most deeply humiliated, most deeply hurt, and moreover, I could tell you things like your ear curl. I was put through the most dreadful tantrums, and moreover, there...
Clement Freud, you challenged twice. Why?
No, I only challenged once.
I did once.
Oh, I see. Well, Chairman, your challenge came in first. Why did you challenge?
Deviation.
Yes, on what grounds?
Well, my hair couldn't curl to begin with.
I think there was quite a deal of deviation from what I most desire in that. So, Clement Freud, you have 1 point, because I agree with the challenge. You have 23 seconds left for what I most desire, starting now.
What I most desire is a small cottage in the country with roses round the door and somebody else's wife standing on the mat, waiting to meet.
Derek Nimmo, you challenged. Why?
Deviation, somebody else's wife.
Yes, I agree with you. I think it would be common to accept that this is a devious way to go along in the society as it is formed today, if you forgive my pomposity, but what else can I say?
It's only somebody else's wife to do for me. I mean,
That gets even worse, Clement Freud. So,
I prefer married staff.
I think you're getting even further embroiled. There are now 18 seconds, Derek Nimmo, for what I most desire, starting now.
What I most desire is a glass of water taken from a little burn outside Aberdeen, with the trout still swimming in the bottom of the glass. And there I could...
Kenneth Williams' wife, you challenge.
Deviation, a trout could not swim in the bottom of that glass.
You're quite right, even a baby trout. So, Kenneth, you have the subject back. You have another point for that. And there are 8 seconds left for what I most desire, starting now.
Oh, I most desire to be totally uninhibited. Take it all off, I cry. Strip off the mask.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Deviation, I think.
I most desire?
But he's stripping it all off and throwing it everywhere.
Yes, well, all right, it may sound devious to you, but I mean, he's allowed to do it if he wishes.
Yes, I'm talking about me libido.
But if you keep your libido down for a little and continue with what I most desire for the next 3 seconds, starting now.
Oh, complete freedom for my soul, so that it may fly into space.
As Kenneth Williams was speaking, when the whistle went, it means that he gains a point. And at the end of that round, Kenneth has got a commanding lead of 2 over everybody else.
Hooray! Oh, lackaday-roo.
Lackaday-roo, Mr. Kenneth Williams. I suggest you keep your finger firmly on your buzzer and see if you can maintain that lead. And Andre Melly, will you begin the next round? Making passes. 60 seconds, starting now.
What you need is a lot of dynamite, a bit of elbow grease, a pickaxe or a bulldozer, and a large mountain, and you're away. On the other hand, you could have a pair of false eyelashes, a miniskirt, and you'll probably have a great success. Italy is supposed to be the country where passes are made at you all the time. I went there quite often, and nobody ever said Bella Bella and pinched my behind.
Derek Nimmo, you challenge. Why?
Reputation of Bella Bella.
Yes. So there we are. Your wonderful command of language loses you the subject, and a point for Derek Nimmo. 35 seconds left for making passes, Derek, starting now.
You see, you have to have one to enter my house. And how I make them is this. You see, I have a piece of green cardboard, and I print on the top, "This is the house of Derek Nimmo."
Andre, you've challenged. Why?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, yes. So, Andre, you have 27 seconds for making passes, starting now.
You have printed on the top. This is the house of Derek Nimmo. And then you press...
Clement Freud, you've challenged. Why?
Repetition of Derek Nimmo.
Yes, and the whole of that sentence, because we've had it once in this round. 24 seconds left for making passes, starting now.
It is often said that if you stand in Piccadilly Circus, all sorts of people will pinch you on the behind. In France, the men tend to go up to the ladies and say, Mademoiselle, vous êtes si belle.
Andre Melli, you've challenged. Why?
hesitation.
Yes, there was. There was also Bella.
But that's how they speak.
Well, all I can say is, Clement, your demonstration loses you the subject. Andre Melli, 10 seconds left, making passes, starting now.
At parties, the most usual opening gambit is, haven't we met before? Which people say to you when they know perfectly well they never have.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Deviation, this is a conversational gambit. It has nothing to do with making a pass.
Well, it depends on the way it is said. It is very difficult to judge on this, and I think this could be the opening to a pass or a pass in itself.
Well,
so I'm still with Andre, who has another point.
Well, I will defer to your judgment.
You're so helpful, Kenneth. 3 seconds left, starting now. Clement Freud, you've challenged. Why?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, Clement, you have a point. 2 seconds for making passes, starting now.
Get over there, you old cow, you say.
That last most revolting pass of Clement Freud, which I hope brings him no success anywhere, has gained him 2 points because he was speaking as the whistle went and won for the challenge, and he now has a small lead over the rest of the...
I've lost my lead.
Yes.
Oh.
On Derek Nimmo, will you begin the next round? My forebears. That is the subject. 60 seconds, starting now.
Once upon a time, I went down to the wood with my 4 bears. There was a daddy one, a mummy, a baby, and a midget. And I went into our little house, and round the table was a big chair, a small chair, a middle-sized one, and a dwarf one. I sat on the first one. It was too hard. I sat on the second. It was too soft. I sat on the third. It was just right, but I transferred my affections to the little tiny weeny one, and that was even better. And then on the table was a bowl of oats, and I tasted the first bowl belonging to those furry creatures that I've been talking about on quadruplet, and there the first one was too hot, and the second one was too cold. The third was just right, but the teeny-weeniest one of all was the nicest of the lot.
Andre Melli, why have you challenged?
A repetition because he's been eating so many lots.
I'm sorry, Derek. I love the story, actually. So there are 11 seconds left, Andre, for you to carry on with my forebears, starting now.
Great Uncle Willie was my favourite. When he died, he was with his maid who was called Davis, and he looked up and he said to her, "Oh, hell," and then he died.
At the end of that round, we have an interesting situation. Andre Melli, who's not with us regularly, has taken the lead just in front of the others. Clement Freud, will you begin the next round? Getting on with other people. Will you try and talk on that subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
Getting on with other people is something which is very simple if you are of a magnanimous and generous phrase of mind and a bent such as Kenneth Williams would show to people. Oh, challenge.
Derek Nimmo, challenge. Why?
Hesitation.
There was hesitation. I thought it was deviation when he was talking about his bent mind, but here we are. 46 seconds for you, Derek Nimmo, to go on with getting on with other people, starting now.
Well, of course, it's terribly important, I think, to get on with other people. I make a point of it. Every time I go on the underground, I say, "What ho, how are you, folks?" And people are always terribly pleased when you wave them a cheery wave. And then you sit beside them and you say, "How are you today?"
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged? Yes, there was a hesitation there, only just, but there we are.
Oh, sitting down, you know.
So, in this game, you haven't got time for such niceties. There are 33 seconds left for getting on with other people, Kenneth, starting now.
I think one of the secrets is to give them the impression that they are finer than the real facts would merit. And I think that the more you assure people of their finer qualities, the more fine
Nimmo,
they will
you've
become
challenged.
in the process.
Derek Nimmo, why have
Very
you...
kindly repeated it again, fine.
Yes, and there we are. There are 18 seconds left for getting on with other people, Derek, starting now.
Oh, it is such fun, you know. When you go to Ramsgate on a Tuesday morning and you see all those fellows on the road selling herrings and going round things like that very quickly, you see, then you have to run this silly and well, you challenge him. You talk absolute rubbish and everything. That's all right.
You have been challenged. Clement, you challenged.
Deviation from the English language.
The justified challenge, 8 seconds left for getting on with other people, Clement, starting now.
Ideally, you do it by your own personal...
Andre Melly, you've challenged.
He
what?
hesitated.
Yes, he couldn't get his own personal out, could he? There we are. 4 seconds left for getting on with other people, Andre, starting now.
The best thing to do is to say nothing and just listen to them talking, and then they think you're lovely.
Once again, Andre Melly was speaking as the whistle went, so she gets that extra point, and now she has a lead of 2 over Clement Freud, who's in second place, and the others are just behind. Kenneth Williams, will you begin the next round? Sensationalism. How about that for a subject for you, Kenneth? You're nodding very seriously. Will
Yes,
you
I see
continue
your point.
for 60 seconds, starting now?
This is something I strongly disapprove of. Sensationalism is something which is directed at the baser instincts of human beings. It is something which we should never encourage in any way whatsoever. Because in appealing to the lower instincts of people...
Clement Freud, you've challenged. Why?
Repetition of instinct.
Yes, 11 instinct. 40 seconds left. Clement Freud for sensationalism, starting now.
Sensationalism has been called the lifeblood of Fleet Street, and indeed, without this, one wonders where the newspaper industry would be. If you buy a paper which comes up between 8p and 9p every week on a Sunday...
Andre Melly, you've challenged. Why?
Repetition, it comes out every week.
All right, Andre, I will give you a bonus point for cleverness. Leave the subject with Clement Freud. 27 seconds left for sensationalism, starting now.
You will find on the front page a piece of print which says, turn to page 4.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Oh, deviation. You'll never find on the front page a piece of print.
I don't know. Do you really think there's such a thing as a piece of print?
Yes?
Ladies and gentlemen of the audience, do you think there's such a thing as a piece of print? If you do, will you cheer? And if you don't think so, will you all boo, and will you all do it together now? The audience are the final judge, whether they're right or wrong. They don't think there's such a thing as a piece of print. So Kenneth Williams has a point. He has 22 seconds left for sensationalism, starting now.
This is done deliberately to get you going, and that's why I strongly disapprove of it. Everything should have a morality. It should be deeply rooted in logos, or, as the Greeks would say...
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Logos, I didn't like.
You maybe didn't like it, but it seemed to fit in all right, whatever it may mean in this context. So
I thought it was going to be something else.
I know you
Yes.
did. You were being just a bit too sharp there with your buzzer. 9 seconds left, Kenneth. And don't be intimidated by the chap sitting beside you, Kenneth. Sensationalism starting now.
The worst aspect of this, of course, is the ghost.
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Aspect is the word he was
I said
searching
the
for.
word- It was the way he pronounced it. It was one of his characters.
A deviation of pronouncement.
It's, you could have the worst aspect. Kenneth Williams has another point. 7 seconds left for sensationalism, Kenneth, starting now.
The worst aspect of this...
Clement Freud, you've challenged.
In that case, it's repetition.
It was repetition that time. I quite agree of aspect, though. Well,
Oh, it's a disgrace.
it is not a disgrace. You've done
I was
extraordinary...
going to tell you about the ghost train and everything. All the sensations I had in it. You've deprived yourself.
No,
That's what
I'm
you've done.
extremely pleased we've been saved that. Anyway, there are 5 seconds left for sensationalism. Clement Freud starting now.
You behaved like a pack of young dogs, says Judge, is possibly my favorite...
If you heard, listeners, if you heard any chuckling and laughter while they were actually speaking in that round, it was that Kenneth Williams and Clement Freud, who sit next to each other, were trying a bit of one-upmanship on each other and really trying to intimidate.
I was blandishing him.
Your blandishments didn't work. Clement Freud had another point at the end of that round, which gives him a lead of 1 over Andre, and Kenneth Williams is still in 3rd place. Derek Nimmo, will you begin the next round? Grace, will you talk on that subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
One thinks immediately of Grace Darling, perhaps, Grace Fields, and also one can think of it as a surname, the great Dr. W.G. I remember hearing about him from my forebear when he played at Lord's in 1895 and scored 100 before lunch. In other words, one can also, of course, be in a state of grace, or one can think of the term in the year of grace. If you think about it, it's the one with
Clement Freud, you've challenged. Why?
Hesitation.
What's it?
Hesitation.
No, I don't think so. No. I thought you were going to have him for grace, and I was going to be terribly clever and say, yes, but they're all different types of grace. So anyway.
I'm sorry, I'll let you make your joke. We'll do it again.
All right, do it again. You going to challenge again?
I'm going to challenge for repetition of
Yes,
grace.
but they were all different types of grace.
Brilliant! Oh, this is a scintillator, isn't it?
Derek Nimmo has another point, and he has 27 seconds left for grace, starting now.
For the another point that I've just received, may the Lord make me truly thankful. That is an example of a grace that one might say on occasion in the game such as the one we're in at the moment. Also, if one is rather naughty, one sometimes ends up in that disgrace.
Clenneth Williams, why do you challenge?
Hesitation.
Yes, Clenneth, you have another point, and there are 13 seconds left for grace, starting now.
Grace, well, of course, this is a delightful quality, and I possess it
Clement
in great
Foy, why have you
abundance.
challenged?
It's not a quality.
Of course it is. Graciousness. What are you talking about, you great fool?
Grace is a state. It's not a quality.
No.
Well,
no.
it is a state. It can, to some people, be, I think, a quality. And if it's Kenneth Williams, I'm sure it is a quality. So, Kenneth, with your quality, will you continue for 8 seconds on grace, starting now?
And as I say, this is something...
Derek Nimmo, why do you challenge?
Repetition, he said it.
Yes, but he actually, it's the phrase he was using, as I say. He has not said that before. So Kenneth has another point, and there are 5 seconds left for grace, starting now.
And whenever I lose the game, people always say to me, didn't you do it with grace? The grace you had. Oh, I was impressed with your grace. They always say that.
So, at the end of that round, Kenneth Williams has leapt into the lead.
Oh, good. Oh, that is
alongside Clement Freud. And they're 1 point in front of Andre Melli. Clement Freud, will you begin the next round? The subject is books. Will you talk on that subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
Books are made of paper, invariably covered by hardboard. They're also soft-covered books, which are much cheaper and available at good newsagents, especially on railway stations. I am a great collector of books, preferring blue ones to those of any other color. I always think that if you get a book which is heliotrope, mauve, purple, or even violet, the continent...
Derek Nimmo, your challenge.
Hesitation.
Hesitation, yes. 31 seconds for books. Derek Nimmo, starting now.
I like, of course, good books. Now, I do think it's awfully important when you're bringing up young children that you should try to...
Kenneth Williams, why do you- Hesitation. Kenneth, you have a point. 25 seconds for books, starting now.
Well, there is a book, Who Runs May Read, which Heavenly Truth imparts. Now, that, of course, was written by Keble in his famous one, and one asks oneself what it really means, you see. Who runs where? May Read, has she got the runs? A May Read runs? Who bows?
Your friend beside you, Buzz, Clement Freud.
Yes.
Why did you buzz, Clement?
It was an overrunning, a sort of a verbal diarrhea.
Just done yourself out of a dissertation on John Keble, one of your great poets. That's all you've done yourself out of.
All right, Clement, you have another point. 7 seconds left for books, starting now. Derek, remember your challenge. Why?
Hesitation, didn't
Yes,
say
hesitation,
anything,
right. 6 seconds for books, Derek, starting now.
Most books start with a preface, which is terribly interesting reading, often better than the main content of the...
Andre Melli, you've challenged. Why?
Hesitation.
Hesitation. Andre, you have the subject. 2 seconds left for books starting now.
You can find an awful lot of them in libraries on his...
Well, you will be fascinated to hear there's but 1 point that separates the 3 leaders in this game. Clement Freud, Andre Melli, and Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, will you begin the next round? How I enjoy myself. Clement Freud, why did you challenge?
Disgusting.
You don't know till he opens his mouth.
Oh, all right.
Clement was trying to forestall your story. We've lost 2 lovely ones about what happened in the ghost train
And John
your
Keble.
dissertation on John Keble. Now let's hear how you enjoy yourself, maybe in the same or other ways, we don't mind. 60 seconds on that subject starting now.
Well, of course, in Who's Who, it simply says that my hobbies are calligraphy and walking. Now, this is to a certain extent true, but not Holy sir. No, you see, because I awfully enjoy a little bit of music, you see.
Oh, well.
I was trying to do him.
Kenneth Williams is telling us he's trying to do an impersonation of Derek Nimmo. He's given us about 3 or 4 other impersonations throughout the show.
His mouth was agape.
His was a gape, yours was a gog, and Clement
got
Freud
the
got him.
point.
You got the
I got the point.
And you got the point as well. Clement, you have another point. You have 43 seconds left for How I Enjoy Myself, starting now.
Actually, I enjoy myself most at a race meeting, particularly at Newbury, Ascot, and York. My main enjoyment comes from backing winning horses, that is to say, such equestrian quadrupeds.
Andre Malley, you've challenged.
Hesitation.
So there are 23 seconds left for How I Enjoy Myself, Andre, starting now.
I do it lots of different ways.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Deviation. He does it lots of different ways.
I will very rapidly give you a bonus point for wicked cleverness and press on with Andre with the subject. 20 seconds left for How I Enjoy Myself, starting now.
In the country, at our cottage, in the sunshine with my baby, is a very nice way to spend one's time. On the other hand, going skiing in the winter, if you can afford it, which isn't very often, and going down the mountains with the sun blazing and the crystal snow crunching under your feet.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Hesitation.
Yes, there was almost just the hint of hesitation there, Andre. So Kenneth has the subject, and there are 2 seconds left for How I Enjoy Myself, starting now.
Going at me shouting, "Had your hair done lately?"
Well, this really is, folks, a most exciting game. Derek Nimmo, the subject now is for you. Your round to begin. My briefcase. 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, my briefcase actually is under the table on the other side at the moment. But I find it very useful, really, because everybody has to keep their briefs somewhere, particularly, of course, barristers at law. And they are handed these briefs by solicitors generally, wrapped up with a bit of pink ribbon round them. They put them in these little bags and they carry them off to the law courts. I don't take mine to the place of law. I tend to take mine with me to television studios and also picnics. Every time I go down to Tunbridge Wells for a little repast in the open air, I take with me the aforesaid receptacle, and out of it I take sandwiches, bloated paste, cream, cheese, jam.
Andre Malley, you've challenged.
Green cheese.
Well, just say why you challenged.
Deviation, it's cream.
Oh, if you'd said hesitation, I mean, cheese might be green. I mean, Derek might have a thing about green cheese. I don't know.
Lovely cheese.
No, see, I've got it so difficult, to be fair, but I think that that is not devious within the rules of the game. So Derek keeps the subject. 23 seconds for my briefcase, starting
And
now.
I took it with me into the King's Arms at Wanstead, and there was a chap behind the bar, and he said, "You tope here?" And I said, "No, I tope with the Bull and Bush round the corner." And he said, "How very interesting." And I said, "I'm glad you find it fascinating. Would you like to see inside this little bag that I've got?" And he said, "I'd be delighted."
Andre Malley, why have you challenged?
Deviation.
Why?
This conversation with the pub keeper wasn't really anything to do with his briefcase.
He just said, "Would you like to see this little bag I've got?" Which I understood to be his briefcase. So I'm still with Derek Nimmo. Derek, another point. And there are 9 seconds left for my briefcase. Derek, starting now.
I took it out. You see, there's a little bit of blotting paper inside. He said, "You always carry that round in the case of briefs." And I said, "I do. And not only that, I defy you to point to anybody else in this bar who hasn't got a similar piece of paper in his bag as well." And he said, "I don't believe it."
Well, as Derek Nimmo was speaking when the whistle went, he gets another point. And that also is the end of the show. And I have to tell you that it is a very exciting finish. Andre Malley was 4th place, 1 point behind Derek Nimmo, 1 point behind Kenneth Williams, who was 1 point behind Clement Freud. I would say it was almost a draw for all of them, but the person who did have one lead was Clement Freud. I would like to have said it was a draw, but there we are. Everybody did extraordinarily well. We hope you've enjoyed this particular edition of Just a Minute, and from all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch. we present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Sheila Hancock in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And once again, we have 4 inveterate players of the game who are going to compete against each other and try and speak for just a minute on some unlikely subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating at all if they can. And the others will score points accordingly, and to those of you who may be new to the game, the scoring, I hope, will become obvious as we progress. Clement Freud, will you begin the show this week? The subject is watchdogs. Can you talk for 60 seconds on that subject, starting now?
This is a very valuable animal to have around the house, and we have got one who sleeps quite heavily, so that every morning when he misses the postman, he gets up and barks the letters. This is an embarrassment because it wakes us up at varying times of the day.
Kenneth Williams, you challenge.
Hesitation.
Hesitation it was, Kenneth. So you score our first point. I agree with your challenge, you get a point, and you take over the subject. There are 43 seconds left for watchdogs, starting now.
I had one once in Cornwall, and we used to go on the beach together, and it was great fun. We used to romp up and down, and his particular cleverness was being able to tell in advance exactly what sort of person was approaching. In fact, when I had this, we call it...
Clement, you challenge.
Hesitation.
Hesitation, I quite agree, Clement, so you gain a point and you take over the subject. 29 seconds left, watchdogs, starting now.
On many building sites, they employ Alsatians, which are used solely to stop intruders from coming along and taking away impedimenta that are left there by the contractors. These dogs are trained in particular kennels where they're taught to recognize those who have no...
Derek Nimmo, you've challenged.
Hesitation.
I disagree entirely.
I thought
so.
you might,
As I disagree, Clement Freud has another point and continues with the subject. 6 seconds left. Watchdogs, starting now.
But many other canine species can be trained to do this sort of work, among which poodles, sheepdogs, Labradors...
The whistle tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at the time of the whistle going gains an extra point. This time it was Clement Freud, so he has a lead over Kenneth Williams at the end of the first round. The other two have yet to score. Kenneth, will you begin the next round? The subject is something I'm sure you are most adept at: creating. Will you speak for 60 seconds on that subject, starting now?
All human beings indulge in this activity simply because their intellectual equipment will allow them to do so, and the fact that they speak with any kind of articulate fluency, volatile nature, call it what you will denote the amount that their intellectual faculty is allowing them to exhibit. Of course, making is what we would equate the word with, and my first essay in this sphere was in making a...
Derek Nimmo, you challenge one.
A repetition of making, with a touch of hesitation.
There was more than a touch of hesitation, I think, and there was a repetition of making. So, Derek, you gain a point, and you take over the subject. 31 seconds left, creating, starting now.
What I like creating in particular are models of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Sheila Hancock, you challenge one. Yes, it
Yes.
wasn't quite
Wasn't
fair.
so much hesitation as a fluff.
Fluff.
Definite fluff.
Well, his definite fluff gains Sheila a point, who takes over the subject. 27 seconds for creating, starting now.
I always envy creative artists. You see, when you're an actress, you're just an interpretive artist. But I think to be able to look at a picture and think I made that would be the most exciting thing in the world. Or a piece of music.
Kenneth Williams, you challenge.
A deviation. She's
What?
discussing not creating, she's just interpreting. So it's not like...
I wasn't. I was talking about making a picture.
What about being an interpretive artist? That's what you said?
Yes, she was, but I think she was comparing it to being a creative artist. So therefore, I'm still with Sheila Hancock, who has she's got 2 points now. And Sheila, you continue with 14 seconds, creating, starting now.
Composing a piece of music or writing a book or a play.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Repetition of composing a piece of music.
Have you said that before,
Yes,
Sheila?
I think I did. I have
Oh,
to
she's so
admit.
honest. Oh,
Yes.
marvellous. Well, what a nice girl to have around. Derek Nimmo, there are 11 seconds for creating starting now.
So off I go with my little hammer, and I bang a nail into a piece of wood. This I'm turning into a large chest of drawers, which I'm going to give to my aged grandmother who lives in High Wycombe.
Kenneth Williams, final chance.
Because he's not discussing creating, he's discussing conversion. You're saying that isn't creating.
That is a very clever challenge, but even if you're converting something, you can still be creative. So I think the only fair thing to do is to give you a bonus point for cleverness, Kenneth, and leave the subject with Derek with 3 seconds for creating starting now.
So when I go round the house and into the trees...
Sheila got his
Hesitation.
Oh,
Sheila
good
has
for
no
you,
point.
girl. Yes.
2 seconds left for creating Sheila starting now.
A man and a woman create babies.
I'm so excited I broke my zip. I've never won one before.
Well, I didn't think it was winning one. I thought it was that creative thought of yours that... Anyway, Sheila Zip, and speaking also when the whistle went, has given her an extra point, and she now has a lead at the end of that round.
Ooh.
Sheila, will you begin the next round for us? Things I've forgotten about. Will you talk about that, if you can, for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, I've forgotten what it was like to win a game because I am a born loser, so I'm feeling very happy at the moment. I've forgotten...
Derek, why have you challenged?
Well, she's remembered that how she felt before, and that's why she's feeling happy since deviation.
What do you mean? I haven't remembered anything.
Yes,
It was
just a minute.
nice.
I'm going to try and be awfully fair here if I can. You have
me a point, then.
remembered, but you are still talking about the things that you have forgotten. So I will give Derek a bonus point for cleverness, but still leave the subject with you. And there are 53 seconds for things I've forgotten about starting now.
Well, virtually anything comes into this category because I have the worst memory on God's earth. I mean, some people say that I can remember faces, but I can't remember names. Well, I can remember neither names nor faces.
Clement Freud, you've challenged.
Repetition of names and faces.
Yes, and remembering them too. So, Clement, you have another point, and you take over the subject. 42 seconds for things I've forgotten about starting now.
I think this is an absolutely impossible subject about which to talk.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Oh, deviation, obviously, if he doesn't want to talk about it, why discuss it at all?
If it's impossible to talk about out of his own mouth, he has committed himself of deviation. So, Kenneth, you take over the subject. 37 seconds for things I've forgotten about starting now.
They would comprise many of the parts which I have played. And I suppose the reason that they are forgotten is that nature designs the
Sheila,
brain.
why have you
Oh, I
challenged?
thought it was hesitation, but he went on all right, so I won't. Go
But
on.
it does mean that as you did challenge, Kenneth gets another point, and he continues with the subject for 27 seconds for things I've forgotten about Kenneth starting now.
Because if one's mental apparatus really did contain the capacity to store indefinitely, we would all, I suppose, end up stark, raving bonkers. Otherwise...
Derek Nimmer, why have you challenged?
Well, he puts it in the future. It's deviation. He's already stark raving.
You don't know what
You are saying that Kenneth is devious because he start raving bonkers. And
No,
he's
said
saying that he's not
he
yet.
would become stark raving bonkers.
And you maintain that
My
he is
proposition
stark
was that
raving.
he is stark.
I will put this, I will not judge on people's personalities, I will put it to the audience again. Do you think that Kenneth Williams is now, at this moment, start raving bonkers? If you do, will you all cheer? Will you do all the cheers first? Cheers first. Is he bonkers now? Is he not bonkers now? They all think you're start raving bonkers. I'm not going to give any points on that. It's not fair. You're being a rotten audience. I'm going to charge no points. I'm going to leave it with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, there are 18 seconds for things I've forgotten about starting now.
And of course, one of the reasons for this curative...
Derek Nimmo, you've challenged.
Repetition of reasons.
Yes, you've got a reason before. There was also hesitation, but Derek, this time I give you a point. 14 seconds, things I've forgotten about starting now.
I have an air raid shelter in the bottom of my mother's garden.
Clement, why have you challenged?
He's remembered the air raid shelter.
There are things in it that I've forgotten.
But you've
Why
remembered
did you
the
think
air
of
raid
this
shelter.
subject here, Messiter, really? All right, now I gave the benefit of the doubt to Derek last time. I give the benefit of the doubt to Clement. 8 seconds left, things I've forgotten about Clement starting now.
Filled with a vacuum of mist and fog, rain pelting in through the doors and the windows.
Sheila, why have you challenged?
I think deviation. What's he talking about?
I quite agree, Sheila. This time I justifiably give you a point. There are 2 seconds left, starting now. Clement Freud, doing again.
Hesitation.
Hesitation.
I was drawing breath.
Fine. 1 second left, starting now.
An afternoon in Reigate.
You do see how our most experienced player of the game, Clement Freud, has got his
He's
finger
a
on that.
cheat.
He's not a cheat. Let's establish this. We've all got a fair chance in this game, and Clement's very sharp at it. And now he's taken the lead. Oh, no, he's not. He equal alongside the indomitable Kenneth Williams. And I might tell you that in second place, also equal, and only 1 point behind, are the couple on my left. Talk on the subject, Clement Freud, now, please, if you can, of wit. For 60 seconds, starting now.
Wit is the sort of thing that you can only talk about if you're on your own. When many of you are speaking in unison, there is a certain witlessness about the conversation which I've often found on this program. The word is also given to describe the occasion 7 weeks after Easter.
Derek, you challenge. Why?
Repetition of 7.
There was indeed. So, Derek, you take over the subject of wit. 40 seconds, starting now.
I like witty folk. I love to hear jolly jokes like, how does my dog smell? Horrible. I've got the joke.
Clement Freud.
My dog's got no nose. How does he smell? Horrible. That's the one. Yes.
So, Clement Freud, you've challenged.
Repetition.
Yes, indeed.
I've heard the joke before.
That is only a clever challenge. It wasn't hesitation. No, you get a point for a clever challenge, because you may have heard the joke before, but it's now wit still with you, Derek. 33 seconds left, starting now.
To wit, to woo, said the owl.
Kenneth, my challenge.
Repetition of 2.
I think in that situation, I must give it to you, Kenneth. Yes, I agree. 30 seconds left for wit, Kenneth, starting now.
The best thing was said on this subject, of course, by Alexander Pope. A perfect judge will read each work of wit in the same spirit that its author writ. And wit in this sense should be noted very carefully by most of London's critics. They're a load of rubbish, of course. None of them have any qualifications for discussing wit, and yet they all do it with what seems to me...
Sheila, you've challenged.
Hesitation.
Well, you should have let me go on. I was having a go
I
at it.
agree, yes.
Why, I thought you got inhibited about it.
Yes,
actually.
you see, she's inhibited me.
I thought the critics had inhibited you.
No, they never do.
Right, 9 seconds left for wit, Sheila, starting now.
Wit can also mean canniness or...
Clement, why have you challenged?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, yes, but I have to hear you say it in case it's something different, which I would disagree with. Clement, 4 seconds left for wit, starting now.
So that given number of days after Easter, we come to the celebration of which...
Well, as Clement Freud was speaking when the whistle went, then he gains the extra point, and it puts him in the lead equal alongside Derek Nimmo at the end of that round, but only just behind are Kenneth and Sheila. It's anybody's game still. Kenneth, will you begin the next round? The subject, following what we've been talking, is very apt. It's called Talking Sense. Will you speak for 60 seconds on that, starting now?
Talking sense I take to mean making your phrases intelligible and comprehensible to your interlocutor. In the famous essay on the subject, Positive Thoughtless Trends by Professor Unwin, he says to rise in the early morn to the waking thoughts of clarity in the Milo, trip over from that very quickly the ancient
Derek.
vicious Sparkus.
Nimmo, you've challenged. Why?
Well, deviation is
Why?
quoting Professor Unwin, who always talks rubbish anyway, so he's not talking sense.
I will give a bonus point to Derek for his challenge, but leave the subject with you, Kenneth, with 40 seconds left, talking sense, starting now.
You talk sense by very often differentiating between the positive and the negative. You illustrate hot by illustrating cold. Of course, I realize I've repeated myself there, and I should really shut up straight away.
Clement Freud, you challenged.
Deviation.
Deviation, why?
From the subject.
Oh, yes, he did go off the subject by saying I've repeated himself then.
Oh,
yes!
Sandy!
Out of your... Yes! You gave yourself away. So, there are 28 seconds for you, Clement, on Talking Sense, starting now.
One of the greatest exponents of this art is Mr. Derek Nemo, who often pronounces his name...
Derek Nimmo, why do you challenge?
Deviation, the name is Nimmo, not Nemo.
Oh, really?
Sorry, you were going to say that anyway, weren't you?
If Clement had then said I wasn't talking about you, it was a chap I know called Derek Nemo, I'd have left it with him, but he's admitted he was talking about my friend over here. So, Derek, you'll get a point. You take over the subject. 22 seconds left starting.
And look, the gentle day before the wheels of Phoebus round about dapples the drowsy east with spots of grey.
Kenneth Williams, why
It has nothing to do with talking sense. It's just reciting poetry.
I am talking sense.
Poetry can be sense, you know, but he is reciting poetry. So I'll give you a point for clever points. I'll give you a point for cleverness.
You should do, because talking is totally distinct from recitation.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
It's
I'm glad you made that point.
I can't give you 2 points, Kenneth. You've got 1
poetry,
point. And I leave the subject because what he was saying was talking sense, whether it was reciting or whether it was poetry or not. So Derek carries on for 11 seconds, talking sense, starting
So
now.
I ran down the Strand on a May morning, and there in the middle of the road was a policeman with his hand up, and I said, "Why don't you talk sense?" And he said, "I don't, because I'm on point duty. I can't possibly do that when I'm on point duty." I said, "You're quite right. I used to say that before."
Clement,
And he said,
why
"Why not?"
not?
So I should go round the other corner, around the left-hand side. I said,
You've been challenged, Derek. I'm terribly sorry.
Repetition of point duty.
Yes, Andrew, there was. Clement heard you repeat point duty more than once. So, Clement, you take over the subject. 3 seconds left. Talking sense starting now.
The chief defect of Henry King was chewing little bits of...
Right, at the end of that round, Clement Freud has a lead of 1 over Derek Nimmo and the other 2 a little bit way behind. Sheila Hancock, will you begin the next round? Slimming. Will you talk about that for 60 seconds starting now?
This is a subject that I find the biggest bore on God's earth. Every newspaper you open tells you a new way of doing it. 1 week you have to eat a lettuce leaf and a banana. The next week you have to have 2 sultanas and a grapefruit. The only way to slim, actually, is to go without food, to fast totally and just have lemon water for 3 days. This is the way I do it. I step on my scales every morning, and if I've gone 1 pound over my perfect weight, which I'm not telling you, I then slim for the rest of the day. I go without, say, breakfast or lunch or my dinner at night until I've lost the 2 pounds that I've gained. Then I have...
Clement, why have you challenged?
Hesitation.
No, I disagree. No, Sheila has another point. And 25 seconds for slimming starting now.
Then I do exercises, yoga, standing on my head so that all my muscles are tense and I have no surplus flat.
Kenneth, you got in first.
No, it's not deviation. I have a surplus flat where I do my exercise.
I haven't heard Kenneth's challenge.
Oh, she took words out of my mouth, didn't she? She's brilliant. She's a BA, you know. She is. She don't go around telling everyone
But
she's
Kenneth,
a BA.
you challenged for deviation.
Well, I was going to, but then she put it right, didn't she? I'd like to stand
Yes,
on
but
it.
she put it right a little bit too late. You got in first, and I'm entitled to give you your challenge for deviation because she was referring to her slimming, and I don't think she has a surplus flat on her
How do
figure.
you know?
You can prove it to us now if you like, Sheila, or I'll pass it straight on to Kenneth. Kenneth, I give you a point. 15 seconds for slimming starting now.
Well, this is something, of course, which has never occurred to me. I have always possessed this lithe, supple, rather sylph-like appearance.
Derek, why have you challenged?
deviation. He's not talking about slimming at all. He's talking about the beauty of his own body, which is already...
But Derek, the beauty of his own body might have been achieved through slimming. Kenneth, you've got another point. 5 seconds left for slimming starting now.
Indeed, people have commented on it and said to me, do you go on a diet or something? How did it come about? You look so lovely.
So, at the end of that round, what is the score? Clement's still just in the lead over the other 3. Derek, will you begin the next round? My first crush. Can you tell us all about that, Derek? 60 seconds will do, starting now.
Her name was Jean Pirrit. She had blue-grey eyes and rather long blonde hair, and she was 13 years old, and she lived behind a high green hedge in the green suburb of Liverpool. I first saw her...
Sheila, why have you challenged?
Repetition of green.
Yes, there was too much green there, I'm afraid. So, Sheila, you take over the subject. 46 seconds for my first crush, starting now.
Was a gentleman called Alan Coast, and please don't write to me if you're listening. It was when I was evacuated and he worked on a farm, and for some unknown reason I pretended I was twins. I called myself Irene and Sheila, and I completely...
Clement, why did you challenge?
Repetition.
Well, all right.
dying to hear that.
It's a good story. I'll tell you afterwards.
No, I'm going to leave it with you, Sheila, because I agree it is repetition, but it's one of those clever challenges, but it's still true that she did do this, so a bonus point to Clement for a clever challenge. 31 seconds with Sheila for my first crush, starting now.
And I pretended that Irene was a nasty...
Derek, why have you challenged?
Repetition pretended. She pretended she was twin.
Yes.
She pretended.
That's right, and also repetition of Irene. 29 seconds for my first crush, Derek, starting
We
now.
were members of the All Hallows Church Youth Group together, and we used to dance on Friday evenings when we were all foregathered. Sometimes we used to go for rambles in the Wirral countryside, and I long remember those blue, sunny days and that far-off spring when we first met. When I last saw her, she was standing on the landing stage at Liverpool, and I waved to her from a troop ship as I set out to Cyprus. She was 17 years old, and her hair was already tinged with grey.
That's the most deviated load of rubbish I've ever heard in my life.
Sentimental,
about to
cloying.
And if you are...
Personally, it was very
And if you are listening, Jean, please do write.
So, at the end of that round, because Derek Nimmo got another point when the whistle went, he has now taken the lead alongside Clement Freud. Clement, will you begin the next round? Subject is straining spaghetti through a tennis racket. Clement, will you speak about that for 60 seconds if you can, starting now?
The problems about straining spaghetti through a tennis racket is to differentiate the catgut from the pasta. Many people think that it is far easier to strain vermicelli through a badminton bat, but I don't agree with...
Kenneth, why have you challenged?
Hesitation.
Kenneth has a point. 43 seconds for straining spaghetti through a tennis racket. Kenneth starting now.
Well, the best way to do this is take the saucepan and pour it over the racket and see that it gets into another dish. I can't really find anything else to say about the subject.
Derek, why have you challenged?
Deviation because he can't find anything else to say.
Well, he may not be able to find anything else to say, but he can still go on talking about it, which is the game after all. So, Kenneth has another point, and there are 34 seconds left. Straining spaghetti through a tennis racket. Kenneth starting now.
The last time I saw this actually executed was in a film, and the bloke doing it was very funny because he got hold of the racket and he held it at a very peculiar angle so that most of the stuff, instead of being strained, so to speak, was all going over him, you see. And it was causing an awful
Clement
lot.
Freud, why have you challenged?
Deviation.
Why? Just...
We didn't strain the spaghetti
I
through
quite
the
agree. It
tennis
was going over him, so it wasn't going through the racket, so it's deviation. So, Clement... Kenneth has just given Clement a tickle for cleverness, and he carries on with the subject. 15 seconds left, starting now.
The average rate of straining is 3 pounds of spaghetti per 10 minutes, provided there are the requisite number of strings on the racket.
Derek, why have you challenged?
Repetition of strings.
Yes, you're quite right. We've had strings before, and so there are 9 seconds left for you, Derek. Straining spaghetti through a tennis racket, starting now.
And so I took the thing out of its case, and I went into my kitchen and very carefully brought the spaghetti to a boil. I then poured it slowly over the top of the rack.
Clement, why have you challenged?
Deviation.
Why?
Spaghetti is plural, and you poured it.
Oh, really?
But colloquially
What's the
speaking...
singular? What's one spaghetti?
What's one spaghetti? What is one spaghetti,
A
Clement?
spaghettos?
One spaghetti is it.
Or one
No,
spaghetti?
but what did you say? A
I said a
spaghettos.
bowl of spaghetti.
Spaghetti.
Leave it to the chairman. You can't all shout the
No,
argument.
you're right, Kenneth.
And I might tell you the chairman's got a difficult decision, so whichever way this goes is going to be the winner of the show. And
Me, give it to me.
no, I think that speaking colloquially, and we do speak very colloquially in this show, one would say, referring to spaghetti, that you strained it through a racket. It might be one thing, it might be the bowl of spaghetti. So I think I've decided it is with Derek Nimmo. Do you agree, audience, or not? There is 1 second left, Derek, for the subject, starting now.
One pulls the strands through very carefully.
So, as Derek Nimmo was speaking, when the whistle went, and because of that last point he got, he has now, at the end of the final round, which that one must be, I'm afraid, taken a small lead and become the winner of Just a Minute this week. Derek Nimmo. Only a little way behind was Clement Freud, and only fractionally behind Kenneth Williams and Sheila Hancock. That is all we have time for. We do hope you've enjoyed this particular edition of Just a Minute. Goodbye from us all.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch. We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Moira Lister in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And as you have just heard, we welcome for the first time on the programme that lovely star of stage and screen, Moira Lister. And I do hope that our three wicked male players of the game will be gallant. And let me remind you that I'm going to ask them all four at some time to speak on some unlikely subject for just a minute, without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating in any way at all. The others may challenge if they think they're guilty and gain points. If you don't know how we score, it may become obvious to you as we progress. Let us begin the show this week with Derek Nimmo. Derek, will you talk of the subject of hot dogs? For 60 seconds, starting now.
Of course, I've always been a tremendous devotee of hot dogs. I've never really liked cold ones. I think whether it be an Alsatian or a poodle or a spaniel or whatever you're cooking, they're so much nicer warm than served with a cold salad.
Kenneth, you challenge. Why?
Deviation. If he's discussing real dogs, he would never cook them.
We don't know what Derek does in his spare time, do we? Oh, dear. Hot dogs do mean a food, I quite agree, so he wouldn't cook them. Yes, that's quite right. So Kenneth Williams gains a point, as I agree with his challenge. He takes over the subject. 44 seconds left. Hot dogs, Kenneth, starting now.
Hot dogs are revolting, but people do eat them, and especially under circumstances which could be described, I suppose, loosely as an emergency. Frequently they turn up when you're filming very late at night with hot coffee, and people do pour this filthy sauce all over them, and then they proceed to masticate them, and the whole process fills me with...
Clement Freud, you've challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, indeed. Yes, the word he was searching for eluded him. Thank goodness.
I'm repulsive.
So, Clement, you take over the subject. I give you a point because I agree with the challenge. There are 19 seconds left for hot dogs, starting now.
A hot dog is a meat substance invariably encased in skin and contains lights, lungs, blood vessels, gristle, tissue appendages, and not more than 15% of chicken, which was recent...
Moira, you've challenged. Why?
Deviation. I think this is absolutely untrue. No hot dog that I've ever tasted has contained any of those things.
I don't know.
You are fooling yourself.
Never has there been a piece of chicken in any hot dog.
I'm sure, Moira, that a lot of hot dogs could contain as much or more than those revolting things that Clement talked about. What I must do here, Moira, is to give you a bonus point for a clever challenge, because it's possibly true what you say, but if we're not certain, I leave the subject with Clement Freud for 5 seconds. Hot dogs, Clement, starting now.
Beef, veal, mutton, pork.
Derek, why have you challenged?
Repetition of a shopping list.
Not of a... yes, it could be a repetition of a shopping list. I'll give you a bonus point for cleverness, Derek. Leave the subject with Clement Freud. 2 seconds left. Hot dogs, starting now.
And a certain amount of water.
At the end of 60 seconds, the whistle goes, and whoever is speaking then gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Clement Freud, and so he has a lead of 1 at the end of that round over all the others. You do see sometimes why I have difficulty, because I know that when I give a decision and there's only 2 seconds to go, somebody is going to get another point, and it's very, very difficult. Moira, will you begin the next round for us? Being a mother, can you talk about that for just 60 seconds, starting now?
Being a mother is a wonderful thing because it gives me a great advantage over my 3 opponents, because it is the one thing that none of them could be. And I enjoy being a mother enormously. I have 2 children. I would have had several more, but the only fear that I had that any of the future children that I may have brought into the world would have turned out to be like my 3 opponents. I mean, take my dear beloved friend on my left.
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Deviation.
Why?
We're not opponents.
You certainly are.
The
You're
way
buzzing
you
away
play
like
the
mad.
game, Clement, you are most definitely an opponent. Maura Lister has a point, and she has 30 seconds for being a mother, starting now.
And my friend, as I said before...
Derek
Oh, you brute!
By her own lips, she
by
has
her own admission, she's
Just
been
going to say
challenged.
lovely things about you, but never mind.
Well, there they might have a chance to hear them later, Maura. Derek, there are 27 seconds left for being a mother. Starting now.
So when I came back from Casablanca, I thought this is time to become a mother. And I must say I'm enjoying it very much indeed. I think one of the great...
Kenneth, why have you
Deviation, he obviously isn't a mother, so he's telling lies.
How do I judge on that? We, oh...
You know whether he's telling lies or not, don't you?
Well, all right then.
Cool.
I don't think Derek Nimmo is a mother, so I'll give it over to you, Kenneth. You have a point, and you have 20 seconds for being a mother, starting now.
Being a mother is, of course, one of the great blessings of the feminine sex. How else could our species procreate itself, you see? We've all got to be procreating.
Clement, why have you challenged?
Repetition.
Of what?
Procreation.
Procreation, yes, I agree. 6 seconds left for you, Clement. The subject is being a mother, starting now.
Being a mother is something many people...
Clement, why have you challenged?
We've already had the repetition.
Yes, you've all said it quite a lot. So, it's been used too often, and there are another point then to Kenneth Williams. 4 seconds left. Being a mother, Kenneth, starting now.
One of the great blessings, and let us all...
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
A repetition, that's how he started last time. One of the great blessings.
Yes, we've had the great blessing before. So there are 3.5 seconds left, Derek. Being a mother, starting now.
For any woman, when she comes down, little baby looks at her eyes for the first time and goes, hello, mama.
Very interesting state. At the end of that round, Derek has taken the lead of 1 over all the others. That's created a silence, hasn't it? Clement Freud, will you begin the next round? Curing a cold. 60 seconds, starting now.
Curing a cold is a very difficult thing to do because many doctors say that this is impossible. Others say that what you must do is eat great quantities of food as opposed to a fever, which can only be cured...
Kenneth, you challenge.
Hesitation.
Hesitation, yes, his cold dried him up, didn't it? 44 seconds left for curing a cold, starting now.
The best way to go about this, and I speak with great authority, the best way to go...
Challenge. Repetition, yes, the best way to go about it. So, Clement, you take the subject back. 37 seconds, curing a cold, starting now.
Make an infusion of mint, bay leaves, and...
Kenneth, you challenge. Hesitation, yes, Kenneth. They don't know much about curing colds, do they? 33 seconds left, curing a cold, starting now.
Russian infusion.
Indulge yourself and lay there in the bed eating everything you can lay your hands on, including the fruit. That's very good for a clear out. Nothing better. Because the fact of the matter is these viruses are in the systems, and you've got to make your capillary action.
Maura, why have you challenged?
How many systems has he got?
He's talking about collective systems, you see.
He was
These
talking about
viruses...
curing his own cold.
We've got other systems in our body. The intestinal system is quite distinct from the blood system.
But the viruses could be talked about in systems generally. She's trying to get in.
I'm trying to get in.
And it was
Killing
a very
myself.
good attempt. And there's 16 seconds for curing a cold, Kenneth, starting now.
You must stimulate the phagocytes. It's been told us again and again, and yet this device is rejected.
Clement, why have you challenged?
Repetition.
What?
Again and again.
Clever, you know.
Clement, you get another point. And you take over the subject, and the 12 seconds, curing a cold, starting now.
You get a towel and drape it over your head while you lean forward with a pot containing boiling water.
Kenneth, why have you challenged?
It's nothing to do with curing a cold. It's inhalation.
Yes, but inhalation is one of the most...
No, that is the result of sinus congestion, which has nothing to do with the cold.
That is quite... It's a very clever point.
Oh, I've been on the ENT course, too. I've done the ENT. When he took to my nose, he said to me, add it off, he said. Trichotomy, definitely trichotomy. Trichotomy.
A repetition of dichotomy.
Ah, but I was explaining, you see.
Yes. Kenneth, when you have a cold, you invariably have nasal congestion, and people who have colds do inhale, so I think it's only fair to leave it with Clement and say there are 5 seconds left for curing a cold starting now.
And inhale gently.
Derek, why have you challenged?
Second time he's inhaled.
Second time he's inhaled.
Yes.
I hadn't said anything.
What did you say then, Clement?
Well, I was only starting the process when this man, what's his name, interrupted me.
I think you talked about inhaling before, and you did say inhale that time. Do you think Clement Freud has said inhale twice? If you do, audience, will you shout cheer? If you disagree, will you boo? Will you all do it now? They all think you said it twice, Clement. Only the listeners can be the final judge, but Derek then gets a point, so there are 4 seconds for curing a cold. Derek starting now.
I do it much the same way as I do with a York ham, actually. I think instead of...
Kenneth, why have you challenged?
Deviation, we're not discussing York hams, we're discussing colds.
I'm cure York hams, I can cure a cold.
No, the one is the process of referring to medical, and the other, of course, is smoking and all that to do with cooking. It's nothing to do with anything else.
You're getting too difficult, Kenneth. He was said he would cure his cold the same way as he would cure a York ham. He never explained. You might have challenged later for deviation. I think, to be fair, I must leave it with Derek with 1 second left, curing a cold starting
So
now.
I put my oven full of smoke.
At the end of that round, Kenneth and Derek are equal in the lead. Just 1 point ahead of the other two. Kenneth, will you begin the next round? The things that some people get up to. A marked subject for you. And will you talk about it for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, the things that people get up to are manifold. One reads about these rags where undergraduates climb spires and place jerrys or poes, as they're sometimes called, on the top, as a gesture, I suppose, of defiance, but they do say it can be construed as a publicity stunt. There are other people who sit on ledges and threaten to drop off at any minute, and the fire brigade arrive, and they spread these great nets below, and all wait for them to carry out this threat. I think it's a waste of time and public money. Absolutely disgraceful. The other things that people get up to, of course, is mountaineering. They climb these mountains for no purpose at all. They're on a building, they get to the top.
Moralista, you've challenged. Why?
Repetition, no purpose.
A repetition of purpose. So she gains a point and she takes over the subject of things some people get up to, starting now.
Like Derek Nimmo wearing my frilly knickers.
Clement, why have you challenged?
Hesitated.
Clement has a point there, and there are 13 seconds left for some people's frilly knickers that they... I mean, I'm so sorry. Some things people get up to, Clement, starting now.
Plymouth Argyle football team recently got up to Carlisle in order to...
Derek, why have you challenged?
I withdraw it. I thought he said Argyle, but he said Carlisle twice. Not Argyle, Argyle, or Carlisle, Carlisle. And so it was a totally wrong challenge, and I do apologize to Mr. Freud and his wife if she happens to...
It's absolutely charming and beautifully done, but we've got to be fair in this game, Derek, and you came in because you thought you had a clever challenge there, and you didn't, so I have to give a point to Clement Freud on
I'm
that.
not disputing. Give him a point. I'm happy for him to have a point.
Oh, the gallantry of the mouse. So little, so lacking on most occasions. 8 seconds for things some people get up to, Clement, starting now.
And on the journey north, the team stopped at Crewe and got out and had...
Kenneth, why have you challenged?
This isn't about getting up to anything. This is about train travelling.
Yes, that's quite true. Can you justify, Clement, very rapidly? No, you can't. Kenneth has a point. There are 4 seconds for things some people get up to, Kenneth, starting now.
Balloons and helicopters and, of course, Boeing.
So, at the end of that round, there is one person who has a lead of 1 over all the rest. It is Kenneth Williams. Derek, will you begin the next round? A nice, delightful subject, taking a Turkish bath. Will you talk on that subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
But of course, this terribly difficult to take a Turkish bath, principally because of the weight involved. Now, I know of one in Jermyn Street which I think is suitable for a quick theft. The way I would go about it, actually, is to come along with a very high movable crane and a large Pantechnicon van. I would suspend the crane over the top of the Turkish bath, possibly on a Christmas day when there'd be few people inside, and that would keep the contents down. And then...
Moira, why have you challenged?
Deviation, it's entirely impossible to lift a Turkish bath because it's built in.
Quite right, Moira. You have a point, and there are 35 seconds for taking a Turkish bath, starting now.
Well, I just lie in it for hours on end. I feel the sweat pouring off my brow.
Kenneth, why have you challenged?
Repetition, hours on end.
Oh, my goodness.
All right, Kenneth, I give you 1 point for cleverness, and I keep the subject with Moira Lister. 31 seconds, Moira, for taking a Turkish bath, starting now.
And as each drop of sweat pours from me, I visualize...
Clement, why have you challenged?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, that's Moira. So Clement has another point, and there are 23 seconds for taking a Turkish bath, Clement, starting now.
There tend in Turkish baths to be 3 rooms of differing temperatures, and one progresses from one to the next, and in the end, when you are in the hottest room of all, you lie with towels draped around you, and you have to be very careful not to touch the wood, which becomes increasingly hot as you stay there, and almost unbearable to the human skin. Attendants...
Derek, why have you challenged?
Well, deviation, he hasn't got human skin.
Do I give you a bonus point for rudery, or what? I think it is...
I don't mind what you do. It was worth saying, wasn't it, really?
Well, all right. What I'll do is I won't score any points because it was a good joke, and say that Clement Freud has 4 seconds to continue with taking a Turkish bath, starting now.
There are scales all over so that you can weigh yourself in case...
Well, as Clement was speaking, when the whistle went, he gets another point, and it means that he's now in the lead alongside Kenneth Williams at the end of that round. Moira Lister, will you begin the next round for us? What can be crammed into a minute? What an apt subject for this show. Will you try and talk on that subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, my last moment has come. I was in a tent in the jungle, and there were animals all around me, and I woke up, and I saw this tremendous skin next to my face. A green, slimy, ghastly, breathing animal was right next to me. And I thought, this is the moment at the end of all. Now, what am I going to do? If I jump from this bed at this moment, it is this enormous snake which is going to bite me and put its fangs into me. So what could I do? I lay there, the sweat pouring from my brow. And I thought, if I jump at this second, it'll turn, and that'll be the end of me. So I lay there, panting, thinking of all the terrible things that I'd done.
Derek, why have you challenged?
Repetition of panting.
As she's repeated nearly everything else, I'm not going to award you any points. So Moira has another point, and she carries on with her panting for another 25 seconds, starting now.
And I thought of all the terrible things that I'd done to everybody. I thought of all the...
Derek, why have you challenged?
Repetition of terrible things.
I know this. I've already established she's already repeated other things, so she can go on repeating. 23 seconds for Moira to continue.
All the laughs that I had pinched from Derek Nimmo in the play that we'd done together. All the times that I'd upstaged him. All the times that I'd worked with Kenneth Williams and I'd let him take the laugh.
Kenneth, why have you challenged?
This has nothing to do with things you can cram into a minute. It's becoming a sort of public confessional.
But she is cramming everything into this particular minute,
Exactly.
So Moira Lister has another point, and there are 15 seconds for what can be crammed into a minute, Moira, starting now.
And as I looked at that animal next to me, I thought, now, this is the end. The end has come. I must jump from this bed.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Repetition of a challenge that won't be accepted.
Well, as I haven't been able to
repetition.
award it to you before, I think on this particular occasion she's cramming everything into a minute, including repetition, deviation, and hesitation. And I've established that, so she must keep going for another 10 seconds for what can be crammed into a minute, starting now.
So I jumped out of the bed and I looked round. What I see, nothing but an enormous, great bullfrog. Wasn't a snake at all. And I was saying...
By some rather devious means, I managed to establish that in that particular subject, what can be crammed into a minute, you could cram in hesitation, repetition, and deviation. And Moira Lister was extremely clever. She crammed them in many, many times. And she is to be congratulated. And as she spoke when the whistle went, she gets another point. But she is
you're very kind.
actually in third place now, just ahead of Derek. But Clement and Kenneth are still in the lead. Clement, will you begin the next round? The subject is frogs, 60 seconds, starting now.
These are possibly the most edible green things that hop about in fields, known in the French culinary language as grenouilles. the leg is eaten more commonly than the rest of the body, and ideally this is taken off the outer...
Kenneth, why have you challenged? Hesitation, yes. You didn't quite know how to get it off, did you? So, there are 43 seconds left for frogs, Kenneth, starting now.
Moreover, what Clement Freud said is strictly inaccurate because he said you could eat a leg. If that is true, we obviously have a limping frog
Moira,
somewhere,
why have you...
and that was prosecuted by the RSPCA.
Why have you challenged, Moira?
Tripping over his words.
No, I thought you were going to say deviation. Kenneth, you have another point. There are 25 seconds left for frogs, starting now.
Then, of course, there are those you get in your throat, as well as those that you stick a sword through. Those are used quite a lot in costume plays, and they say, oh, where is my... referring to it, you see, which I'm not going to do now, otherwise they'll get me on the challenge. And then there's another kind of frog again. It's a sort of nickname they give to Frenchmen. People do say.
Well, as Kenneth was speaking, when the whistle went, he gains yet another point and gives him a very definite lead over all the three others at the end of that round. And Kenneth, it's your turn to begin the next round, and the subject that Ian Messett has thought up happens to be rather apt at this moment. It's called being sent up. So, will you try and talk on that subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
This has happened to me quite a lot, and there are...
Moira, why have you challenged?
Hesitation.
Do you think it was a hesitation, listeners? If you agree, will you cheer? If you disagree, will you boo? And will you all do it together now? Moira Lister, they agree with you. You have a point, and there are 55 seconds for being sent up, Moira, starting now.
I have absolutely no idea what it means by being sent up, but I shall try to defend the subject. I suppose this happens to actors as Kenneth Williams when he is doing something a little peculiar on a stage or in a television show, and so the audience therefore say, let us do just what we've said to Kenneth Williams by...
Clement, why have you challenged?
Repetition of Kenneth Williams.
Yes, we've had a bit too much of Kenneth Williams at this particular point, so accurate repetition. Clement, you have another point. 38 seconds left for being sent up, Clement, starting now.
This means quite literally to be put into a container and to be lifted to some higher floor. One can be sent up in a lift, in a packing case, or in a paternoster, which is a conveyor belt containing cubicles into which one gets to rise to a higher level than the one from which one came. In the
Derek, you've challenged. Hesitation, I quite agree, Derek. There are 18 seconds for being sent up, starting now.
See, when I look at him across the table, I shout, "Go on, sucks to you! Go on, clear off in you great big softy!" And that's what's being called being sent up, and he knows that people shouting all the time.
Clement, why have you challenged? Hesitation, you've got him in exactly the same challenge. You have the subject back, 9 seconds, being sent up, starting now.
So, having passed that much time without anyone challenging me at all, I thought I would say, go ahead, my men.
That was the most interesting silence we've ever had on Just a Minute.
Nobody challenged.
There were actually 8 seconds went by, nobody said anything, and nobody challenged. But anyway, Clement got a point at the end of that round because he was speaking. He's now in second place, but Kenneth is very definitely still in the lead. Moira Lister, will you begin the next round? And it's a very apt one for someone who's been the first time in the programme. But I might tell you, Moira, you are in a very commanding third place. You're doing jolly well for the first time. And this subject is getting a break. Will you talk on that subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
The first break I got was actually in my right arm. I used to play with my 2 elder sisters, who used to play a game of witchy, and I was the good fairy. They used to tie a rope round me and throw me over the balcony of a 2-story house that we used to live in as a great game. But this particular day that we were playing it, the telephone actually rang in the middle of the game, and so they ran...
Kenneth, why have you
The game has been mentioned 4
The game
times.
has been mentioned, alas. So there are 38 seconds for getting a break, Kenneth, starting now.
Well, getting a break, I presume, means an opportunity which, when you're given it, you have the chance to do something which ordinarily would never have presented itself to you. And so, consequently, you say thereafter, "Oh, what a wonderful period that was in my life. That was my big moment. And when I went out there onto that stage, look at the reaction to me. They got up in their seats and they knocked on my door and they made me a very nice proposition."
What an apt moment to say that is the end of Just a Minute, because Kenneth Williams was not only getting a break, he was just demonstrating how to get a break. He took his break in both hands. He not only had a lead before, he finished up with a commanding lead, and he's undoubtedly the winner this week of Just a Minute. Only 1 or 2 points separated Moira Lister, Clement Freud, and Derek Nimmo, who were second, third, and fourth, respectively. And that, I'm afraid, is the end of Just a Minute. And from all of us here, goodbye. Goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.
We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Sheila Hancock in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you very much indeed, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And having brought on our 4 keen and active competitors of the game, we're going to start playing once again with the same rules, of course. I'm going to ask them to speak, if they can, for just 1 minute on some subject without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject. And according to how well they do that, they will gain points, or their opponents will gain points. And let us begin the show this week with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, joy. Talk to us about joy for 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, she is the daughter, of course, of Edith and lives at Harrogate. And when she presented her little baby, Perihan, to me for the first time, the child cried out in alarm. I said, oh, have I put him off, do you think? Actually, I didn't know then the sex, you see. That's why I said him instead of her.
Oh, Sheila Hancock, you've challenged.
Deviation. He's talking about Joy's baby, not about Joy.
Yes, I think you've gone on for quite a long time about the baby. And
You're very fly, aren't you?
I always start off well. I taper off as the evening goes on.
Yes, that was 26 seconds you went, and only 5 of them were on Joy. So, Sheila, I agree with your challenge. You gain a point, and you take over the subject, and there are 34 seconds left for Joy, starting now.
There are many times in my life when I experience joy. Usually as...
Kenneth Williams has challenged. Why?
Repetition many times in her life.
As the audience have applauded your thought and your comment, we will give you a bonus point, Kenneth, but leave the subject with Sheila, because she hasn't, strictly speaking, deviated from the subject on the card, which is joy. So, Sheila, there are 30 seconds for you to continue with joy, starting now.
I suppose the greatest moment was when I first looked at my little daughter, Ellie Jane. Mind you, I didn't know quite what to do with her, but I was very joyful. Then when I see a lovely sunny day and I smell the new Monet...
You challenge first. Hesitation, yes. So when you fluff on a word, it sounds like hesitation.
It was a lovely picture, though, isn't it?
Lovely picture.
Lovely picture. Derek, I agree with your challenge, so you gain a point, and there are 17 seconds left, Derek, starting now.
Hallelujah! My heart is filled with joy. Now the bells ring. My goodness, what a wonderful day. As I walk along the main street with the snow swishing down around me.
Clement Freud is challenged.
It's 3 seconds to go, didn't it? 3 seconds to go.
Clement, why have you challenged?
Deviate.
Why?
Snow on this wonderful day.
And I think
wonderful day.
snow can give people a lot of joy
Oh,
on
it's
occasion.
no good, Clem. He's obviously partisan. No good. You're fighting a
You were
losing
trying
battle,
very
mate.
hard to get in.
Well, I
just
hadn't
before-
said anything. No.
Oh, he's
know.
partisan. He's obvious. Dire cigarette.
Clement, no, I disagree. He wasn't deviating from the subject of joy. So, Derek, you have another point. 2 seconds left, starting now.
Joy King was the third daughter of Henry.
Whoever is speaking when the whistle goes, which tells us that 60 seconds is up, gets an extra point. And this occasion it was Derek Nimmo, and he now has a commanding lead at the end of that round, and Derek is challenged. Why?
Well, I'd just like to point out to Clement Freud that he challenged when there were only 2 seconds to go.
Yes.
And he rather misjudged it. He normally challenged when there's a game. That's just a...
Well, I think that's very clever of him.
Yes,
don't
just
you?
a misjudgment.
He's counting it down. Maybe next time he'll challenge where there's only 1. Let's continue with the show. Clement Freud, it is your turn, and what a strange subject. The thoughts of Mao. Clement, can you talk to us on the thoughts of Mao, 60 seconds, starting now?
This is a book which I've been trying to get from the public library for many months now. But I imagine it is full of such truths as better to have a one-legged communist prawn than a dirty imperialist buffalo. This is the kind of thought which I imagine Mao would...
Derek Nimmo challenge.
Repetition of imagine.
Yes, you did say imagine before.
Well, it's awfully mean of him. It was getting really interesting.
But he did say
looking forward to
imagine
those one-legged
twice, so-
prawns and things.
Derek, I agree with your challenge. You gain a point, and there are 41 seconds left for the thoughts of Mao, starting now.
When one goes to Shanghai these days.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Deviation. He never goes to Shanghai.
When one goes.
I'm sure he probably never goes, but he did actually say when one goes to Shanghai.
Well, when
which-
one means himself, doesn't it?
No, it means anyone.
Well, why didn't he say when anyone goes to Shanghai?
He didn't actually say when I go to
You're
Shanghai.
no partisan.
I'm
It's all-
not. I try to be fair, and whoever I disagree with when they challenge, I'm always accused by that person of being unfair to them. But I'm afraid on this occasion I disagree with your challenge. Derek keeps the subject and a point. 37 seconds left. The thoughts of Mao, starting now.
If one goes into a Charing Cross...
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition.
Of what?
One goes. When one goes, if...
Absolutely right, yes, give it to
The
Freud.
repetition of a phrase. So that is right. Clement Freud, I agree with your challenge. You get a point, and there are 36 seconds left. The thoughts of Mao, starting now.
Pathetic ploughmen trudging their weary paths.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Deviation has nothing to do with now. It's a paraphrase of Gray's Elegy.
It's perfectly possible that one of the thoughts of Mao could be a paraphrase of Gray's Elegy, because I actually haven't read it.
That's nothing to do with What about great poets?
Well, I must be honest, I have not read all the thoughts
Just
of
because he
Chairman
swam
Mao.
up the Yangtze doing the breaststroke. It's ridiculous. I've
But
done
all
the
right.
crawl all down Oxford Street. No one took a blind bit of notice.
I can only... As I've never read the thoughts of Chairman Mao. And I'm... So, as most of the audience have not read the thoughts of Chairman Mao, I think the only thing I can do is to put the final decision to them. If you consider that Kenneth's challenge was legitimate, will you cheer? And if you disagree with the challenge, will you boo? And will you all do it together now? They're all against Mao. They want you to swim down the Oxford Street. You get the subject on the audience's verdict, Kenneth, and you have 30 seconds for the thoughts of Mao, starting now.
Well, these were a load of old rubbish collected in red books and distributed by a lot of infamous youths who became known, I believe, as the Red Guard. And
Derek, number wife, who challenged.
Repetition of red. Red books, red...
Yeah, red books and red. Oh, bad
oh,
luck.
I mean, it's so unfair.
Yeah, it is tough. Yes, there we are. Derek, 2 reds, gains you a point. 21 seconds. The thoughts of Mao, starting
It's
now.
not generally known to the Western audience that the thoughts of Chairman Mao tend to be rather grubby. In fact, awfully dirty. And this is something that he has kept from his wife for many years. And that is why he is always surrounded by these gentlemen with guns, revolvers, and even machine-type weapons.
So once again, Derek Nimmo was speaking when the whistle went, gains an extra point, and has increased his lead over everybody else at the end of that round. Sheila Hancock, your turn to begin. The subject is waffles. Can you talk to us about them for just a minute, starting now?
This is something at which this team is expert. Waffles. It is a way of talking to fill in time, which is a load of rubbish, and which Kenneth Williams is particularly adept at.
Kenneth Williams' challenge.
Deviation. Am I going to sit here and be told I talk a load of rubbish? One of the greatest no.
So why are you challenging? Why are you challenging?
Because it's a disgrace. Deviation. It's untrue.
No, I'm sorry. She did actually repeat particular twice, but it's too late now. You charged for deviation, and she wasn't deviating from the subject, as the way I see it, because she can interpret this in a
You
way.
passed your opinion on General Mao. I'd pass my opinion on you.
You are extremely rude. You're such a cake-hole.
There you are.
I think that was
I'm
slightly
going to have to
rude.
come here to be insulted.
You can be insulted anyway.
Right. So now that everybody's insulted everybody, let's get on with the game, shall we? I disagree with the challenge, so Sheila gains a point, and there are 47 seconds left for waffles starting now.
Apart from that, it is a revolting convection, which is a sort of biscuit.
Derek Nimmer's challenge, why?
Well, it doesn't make sense, deviation. She could say revolting convection instead of confection, that's what she was trying to say.
Yes.
So it's deviation, not making sense. Load of rubbish.
Derek's on a point, 44 seconds, waffles, Derek starting now.
See them waffle along. It's a lovely sort of thought.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Because the deviation of the song is not see them waffle along. It's see them shuffle along.
Oh, it is.
See them shuffling along.
The subject
We
is not
love
shuffling.
that, and the audience adored it, but it's got absolutely nothing to do with waffles. He never said it was the song. He was just said, see them waffle along. He's entitled to say it if he wants
He
to.
was doing a lyric.
Yes, oh, ah, la, la, la. He wasn't deviating. There are 35 seconds for you, Derek, to continue with waffles, starting now.
Jolly nice when you get them inside your gullet, because they're so sweet, tender, and in every possible
Clement Freud
way.
challenged.
Hesitation.
Hesitation, because he really wasn't making sense. All the words were jumbled. Clement, you get a point.
I thought I was making
And there are
sense.
28 seconds for waffles, starting now.
The most extraordinary thing about New York restaurants is that they tend to sell these with maple syrup sprawled all over them, also bits of streaky bacon and cucumber slices. You go into a salon, which they call an eating house, and together with...
Derek Nimmer, you've challenged.
Hesitation.
Well, it was so borderline, I don't think, it's one of those difficult things, I don't think it was quite hesitation, so I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to Clement. He keeps the subject, 11 seconds left, waffles, Clement starting now.
Some of the best borderline waffles I've had were on the Mason-Dixon line, where they served them with baked bean.
Derek Nimmer, you've challenged.
Repetition of serve.
Yes, they
Serve
have
with
served
cucumber.
before. So, Derek, that's correct, you'll gain a point, and the subject, 5 seconds left, waffles starting now.
If you go into the House of Commons, you will see a lot of people.
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
There's nothing to do with waffles.
Well,
Exactly.
But he has, you mean exactly, quick, Kenneth. He only said one sentence, there's 3 seconds to go, you know
It's
that.
a long sentence.
It's a long sentence, and
Nothing.
probably
If you will
he
go to
has
the House
not.
of Commons.
If you go into the House of Commons, he has not finished. Derek gets a point. 2 seconds left. Waffles starting now.
Dick's Diner, which is just off the M1, sells the most...
Derek managed to speak again when the whistle went, so he gained more points and has increased his lead, which is now quite commanding over the rest. Derek, it's your turn to begin. The subject, wizardry. That's, oh, this has gone very quiet. I haven't put a spell out anything like that.
Wizardry.
Can you talk to us for 60 seconds on wizardry starting now?
This is something which both the Old Testament and the New Testament...
Clement Freud. Challenged.
Repetition of testimony.
Yes,
I hadn't said
perfectly-
Testament, I said New Test.
What were you
Yes,
going
it's
to say?
coming up. Right.
In that case,
Oh,
Old
good, you're
Testament
trying
before
to
he can
flatter your
challenge.
way out of it.
In
An
that case,
anticipatory challenge.
in that case, hesitation.
Yes, he's
I only got
see-
as far as Test.
You see how they try and bluff me out of it? No, I quite agree with Clement's challenge. You get a point, Clement. Wizardry starting now.
In a P.G. Wodehouse play, a character...
Derek's got back in again.
Oh, hesitation.
Hesitation, yes. 56 seconds left. Wizardry starting now.
Deuteronomy and Isaiah forbid the use or the acquaintance with sorcerers and wizards. They are male people who conjure up evil spirits.
Clement Freud's challenged.
They're not necessarily male
They
people.
are
they're
necessarily
deviant.
male. Wizards can only be male.
Or hermaphrodite.
Very sharp challenge, but I disagree. Derek has another point. 41 seconds. Wizardry, Derek, starting now.
sorry,
Clement
I
Freud's challenge.
I didn't know you
Hesitation.
said
Hesitation.
Hesitation. 39
Really?
seconds
Yeah.
for you, Clement, on wizardry starting now.
Wizardry, he said. And the,
And Sheila Hancock's challenged.
Repetition.
You're allowed to repeat the title
Oh,
yesterday,
but
Grace.
not
All
like
you are.
You're aggressive. What's going on between you and Clement Freud?
Going on.
You're ganging up against Derek and I.
Ours has been the most honourable acquaintanceship.
I must say, I pointed out before they came together in Just a Minute, and
That was because of the taxi. Nothing to do with
the
anything else.
taxi. Well, I must say the partnership's
I
increased.
come over faint. He helped me out. That's all. That's all there is to it.
Well,
he
it's
put his
now
arm
known
round me because I was fainting. I was falling. I had 2 sherries. That's what done it. It was the intoxication, you see.
2 sherries, that's repetition. Now just keep
Oh,
quiet for a
sorry.
second. Unfortunately, Sheila,
I
it was a
know.
rather clever ploy of Clement's which got a challenge and gets him a point. It's another way of getting points, you see. You came in straight away, was repetition, but he's allowed to say because it's the subject on the card. Clement, you get another point. 32 seconds left, starting now.
I met my wife when she played the part of Beauty, and the wizard was played by an old man who later became...
Derek, they were wife...
Revolution of played, actually. I first met my wife when she played
Beauty, yes, well listened. And there are 25 seconds for you now, Derek, with wizardry starting now.
I'm off to see the wizard, the wonderful ditto of Oz. Why? Anticipatory challenges will do you no good.
I'm sorry.
Why did you challenge, Kenneth?
It was Sheila's challenge that should be heard, not mine.
Sheila, what was your challenge?
I didn't, did I?
Deviation.
It was your challenge, Kenneth.
Deviation.
Oh, I'm sorry, it was Clemens.
It wasn't. But on behalf of my colleague
Yes.
and friend...
Yes.
Ooh, here we go again.
Stop this romance under the table.
Deviation.
What is going on what grounds is it devious?
He said, I'm off.
I'm off?
Yes.
I'm off to see the wizard. I'm sorry, you've got me completely foxed. He said, I'm off to see the wizard.
I didn't challenge
Wonderful
him.
ditto, but I know.
Who challenged me?
Kenneth's buzzer came up, and Kenneth doesn't wish to claim the challenge, so all that happens is that Derry gets a point. He continues with wizardry. 22 seconds left, starting now.
In Revelations and St. John, it is also...
Kenneth
We've already had all this biblical stuff. It's terribly boring. Dreary, boring rubbish.
Well,
I don't want to hear all this biblical stuff all the time.
he wasn't deviating from wizardry, therefore I have to give him another point.
Oh, it's a
And
disgrace.
17 seconds left for wizardry starting now.
Always terribly like Merlin. You know, that's the chap, the long tall hat with the stars and the moons on it and the big one. And he goes around the place in those lovely stories which I used to listen to and even read when I was very tiny, weaving spells and making magic. And my goodness, how my childhood
Well, in spite of being intimidated on all sides and trying very hard himself, he's doing extraordinarily well, this particular show, Derek is, yes. He's increased his lead. No, Clement's well up there in second place, but Sheila Hancock and Kenneth Williams are trailing a little. Kenneth Williams, it's your turn to begin.
Well, thank goodness for that. Yes.
Yes, it's lovely to hear from you again. The subject is fallacies. Can you talk to us about them for just a minute, starting now?
One of the greatest historical fallacies is that John Lackland was some sort of idiot who lost his jewels in the wash, whereas in actual fact he established the judiciary system of England most excellently and was a loyal and devoted son. Records still extant show that every year yards of damask, cotton, and other beautiful things were given to his mother. And what finer testimony can you have of a man's devotion who loves me?
Honestly, he goes off into these flights of fancies and nobody dare challenge him in case he's talking facts.
Why are you challenging Sheila?
Deviation.
Why? What
Well,
grounds?
it's rubbish. I can't make head nor tail of it.
He did establish, actually, that there was a great fallacy about this.
But Lackland was a fool who lost his jewels in the wash, and that is not so. He's an industrious man. That's what I'm saying. I'm establishing
Yes,
the fallacy.
but you established it was a fallacy, but then you went on a great length about him and his losses and
Well,
his
how else
mother.
do you disprove a fallacy than by going on about it? I mean, do tell me. I'd like to know. I'd like to know. I'd like to know what your masculine heart is doing now. I know what mine's doing. It's pounding inside. They'll be coming up to my door. They'll be knocking on my door.
He's insane.
He's gone.
I thought it was very well argued.
Thank you very much, Clem. You're a
It was very well argued, but all right. There seems to be a difference of opinion. The audience will be the final judge. If you consider that Kenneth had managed to get away from talking about fallacies and his illustration had gone right on to something else, then you're on Sheila's side. Will you cheer? And if you're on Kenneth's side, will you boo? And will you all do it together now? Sheila, you have it. You gain a point. 20 seconds left for fallacies, starting now.
It is a fallacy that it is easy to play this program. I can tell you that it is incredibly difficult to talk.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
It is 3 times.
Oh.
It is a fallacy. It is a fallacy. It is. 3
Yes,
times.
she said it 3 times. So, Kenneth, to be accurate, I have to give it to you. 13 seconds left, fallacies starting now.
Also, it's a great fallacy to assume that the English are by nature phlegmatic and unemotional. This came about largely due to the Duke of Wellington impressing his persona so much upon the national consciousness.
Well, Kenneth was speaking when the whistle went. He gained an extra point, and he also disproved another fallacy.
And have I got into the lead?
No, you haven't.
Oh, it's a disgrace.
He proved that you can go on being rude and still the audience love you. I've never...
How many marks have I got then?
You've got 4, and so has Sheila Hancock.
Well, who's winning?
Derek Nimmo's still winning, and Clement Freud's in second place. And actually, if Sheila hadn't been held by the audience, you would have won.
That's true, yes.
Yes, there we
She's a
are.
conniver.
Anyway, the audience are on your side that time, Kenneth. The subject now is for you, Clement Freud. Oh, what a topical one, fuzz. Can you talk to us about fuzz, Clement? 60 seconds, starting now.
Fuzz is a name popularly given to the police forces of the world, but also the mildew surrounding a gooseberry.
Kenneth Williams, wife of
Deviation is not true.
Well,
Fuzz is not given to the police forces of the world. It
Oh,
happens
yes,
to be a
accord-
London expression. It's
Kenneth,
nothing to do with the
according
police
to-
forces of the world.
Kenneth!
I-
You've gone too many times. Listen, depending on who you are, you might call any police force the fuzz. So anyway, Clement, I disagree with the challenge. There are 51 seconds for fuzz, starting now. Derek Nimmo got his...
Hesitation.
Yes, there was. 50 seconds for you, Derek, on fuzz, starting now.
Fuzz is what Clement Freud hasn't, because he is rather short of follicles. In fact, the top of his head is particularly bleak. It is, as he well said. I thought he said it awfully well, really. When I thought about it.
Sheila Hancock. challenge.
Repetition of well.
Absolutely
Very
right,
well,
yes.
Well said,
Yes,
well said, well
done.
said, Sheila. Well said, Sheila. A point for you. 38 seconds, fuzz, starting now.
I would challenge that Clement Freud hasn't much fuzz. He has quite a considerable amount around his chin.
Derek Nimmo's challenge, why?
Deviation, how does she know what I was going to say?
Round his chin, I can
No.
see it.
She's using fuzz to mean that furry stuff that people
I
have
see.
on their head, or
Yes,
that soft,
right,
silky
right,
stuff
right.
that some of the girls have on their
Absolutely.
head. So, a different meaning to you, Derek. I think Sheila has a point. 33 seconds, fuzz, starting now.
The fuzz wear dark blue uniforms and sometimes helmets, or if they're officers, they wear peaked caps.
Kenneth Williams has challenged, why?
Well, she's just said it's on his chin, and now she's saying they wear dark blue uniforms. They can't be on his chin one minute and in uniform the next.
If
What's
you're
she-
challenged and you start again, it can be, because this word can mean more than one thing, so you can take the word and talk about it in any sense you wish, and that's what Sheila was doing. So she wasn't deviating, Kenneth. There are 27 seconds for fuzz, Sheila, starting now.
Some people talk of them in a derogatory fashion, but I think they are splendid, and in England we are very lucky because we have a particularly good police force.
Clement Freud challenged.
Repetition of police.
I think she did.
I don't know.
No,
you talked
she's
about the
not about
fuzz
saying
before. You
I
didn't.
call them the fuzz.
No, she didn't actually say the word police before. Sheila
lost
has
that.
another point. And there are 18 seconds for fuzz, Sheila, starting now.
Unlike most forces, ours are unarmed. They have immense bravery to face sometimes riotous mobs just by linking their hands and saying nice things.
Derek Nimmo, you challenged. Why? Yes, there was a hesitation. Everybody was quiet because they wanted to hear that little eulogy to the British police force. But, Derek, you were correct. 4 minutes. 4 minutes. 4 seconds, actually, will do. Fuzz, starting now.
I would like to endorse Sheila Hancock's wonderful remarks about fuzz.
Sheila Hancock. why-
Repetition.
What?
Because he's saying he's endorsing what I've already
Oh,
said.
yes, that's
We give Sheila a bonus point for a clever thought, but as Derek wasn't, strictly speaking, deviating from the subject, he
No, I
continues
said
with it.
repetition, not deviation.
say deviation. I'll call you out.
Why are you so keen to catch everybody out today?
Because you're so partisan.
He's having one of his spells today, Kenneth, isn't he?
Yeah. Who's put the wizardry on you? You're all of a fuzz at the moment. So, Sheila gets a point, but Derek continues with the subject. 2 seconds left. Fuzz starting now.
Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for. The final score is Kenneth just in 4th place. We heard a lot from you, but it wasn't always when playing the game. In 2nd place, completely equal, Sheila Hancock and Clement Freud, but all trailing quite considerably behind this week's winner, Derek Nimmo. We do hope you've enjoyed this particular edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Rossiter and produced by David Hatch.
We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Miriam Carlin in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And we welcome in the show Miriam Carlin, who's joined these other 3 old campaigners at the game. And they're all going to try and speak at different times for just a minute on some unlikely subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, without deviating in any way from the subject. And if one of the others thinks they're guilty of one of these crimes, they may challenge and gain a point for themselves or otherwise. And if you're not sure how we score, we hope it will become obvious as we play the game. Derek Nimmo, will you begin? The subject is makeup. Will you try and speak for 60 seconds on that subject, starting now?
Makeup can be used either as a verb, really, or as a noun. I shall take the former first. It is really the process of currying favour or acting in an obsequious manner when you're trying to obtain some sort of reward from somebody, as exemplified, really, by the way that Clement Freud behaves towards Nicholas Parsons. Whenever he wants to try and gain an extra point on a dubious challenge, he makes up to Nicholas Parsons. Repetition of Nicholas Parsons.
Kenneth Williams.
Well, you take the words out of my mouth. It was there.
I managed to correct it, you see, before
I
said it's all right.
It's not all right, I'm afraid, Derek. I agree with Kenneth Williams' challenge, so that means he gains a point, the first point to be awarded, and he takes over the subject of makeup, and there are 34 seconds left, Kenneth, starting now.
It is one of the most disgusting.
Derek Nimmo, you've challenged.
Hesitation.
Hesitation. I agree that was a hesitation, Derek, so you gain a point, and there are 32 seconds for makeup starting now.
Of course, as a noun, it is something which people, mainly ladies, and very often gentlemen these days, I'm ashamed to say...
Hesitation.
I don't think there was hesitation. It was bordering on it. Teetering on it. I'm not going to be intimidated by the audience. No, Derek. Nimmo has another point, and there are 29 seconds left for makeup starting now.
When I get into my dressing room in the theatre in the evening, I put a bit of grease paint on my face, really. Number 5, or perhaps number 9. I then put a carmine liner on top of my eyes and black underneath. I put on my toupee, which I keep to one side.
Kenneth, why do you challenge?
Put on 3 times.
Yes, he did put on rather a lot, didn't he? So, Kenneth, you have another point, and you take over the subject. There are 12 seconds left for makeup starting now.
Makeup is one of the most revolting aspects of this age, and of course, meretricious. This must be borne in mind when any discussion of it takes place. Cosmetics...
Derek Nimmo, you've challenged.
Quite understand. Deviating. Why can it be revolting and meretricious?
Yes, it is rather difficult.
Well, I
isn't
mean, we
it?
can't go off into a great thing on semantics. We've got to play the game.
They do seem to be rather...
I don't know whether it can be meretricious and revolting, so I'm going to put it to the audience and let them be the
They
final
don't
judge.
know anyone.
Well, as I don't know either, I'm going
I
to let
can
them
tell you.
judge. No, I'm not going to let you tell me or Derek. I'm going to let the audience judge. If you agree with Derek's challenge, will you please cheer? And if you disagree, will you please boo? And will you all do it together now? I think they disagree. So, Kenneth, you have another point. There are 2 seconds left for make-up, starting now.
The face needs...
Miriam Carlin, you've challenged. Why?
Oh, I just
Derek,
wanted to
Kenneth Williams has another point. 1 second left, Kenneth, for make-up, starting now.
The face needs no adornment. It's lovely as it is.
Miriam, I'm sure, was trying the trick that so many of them try, and that is to try and challenge just before the whistle goes, because you can get not only another point for that, but a point for speaking while the whistle goes.
That's right, you read my mind.
Yes, but you weren't successful. Bad luck, Miriam. Kenneth gets that extra point for speaking when the whistle goes, and at the end of the first round, he has a very commanding lead over all the others. So, let's hear how we continue. Clement Freud, we'd love to hear from you.
Good evening.
And will you now try and talk for just a minute on the subject of empathy, starting now.
Empathy is the sort of thing that children who can't pronounce their S's say when they actually mean sympathy. If you look up the word in the Oxford English Dictionary or similar volumes, it is possible that you will find it described as a feeling of affinity between two people, which is more one of mental attraction than one of actual physical communion. I think I'll stop here.
Derek Nimmer, you challenge.
Hesitation on the grounds he packed up.
He not in fact. I say was hesitation, Derek, and you gain a point, and you take over the subject. There are 33 seconds for empathy, starting now.
Because I have the most tremendous empathy for Kenneth Williams. I find we are kindred spirits in so many ways. It is quite extraordinary. This great, overwhelming attraction, which I find quite unbearable sometimes. I've never sitting on number 45 bus, and I thought to myself, I have an empathy for that man. And you know, when I came into there, what did I see? Nothing but hatred, an overwhelming disdain from him, and all the time, the empathy's bubbling up inside me.
Miriam Carlin. Miriam, you challenged his bubbling just before he went on the boil.
Hated to interrupt, but he did
I wasn't too
repeat
keen on that,
empathy at least 3 times.
Miriam, as
Can
you were
you?
next to him, I think you can be the only judge of how many times he said it, so I will accept your word that if he
I
said...
don't particularly want to speak about it, but...
You have to now, dear. You
You
have
have
to.
the subject now. You challenge. You're in with the subject, and there
How
are
many
7
seconds?
seconds for empathy, starting now.
Well, the subject I'm
Derek,
Yes, you're quite right.
hesitation. Derek, you have a point. There are 5 seconds for empathy, starting now.
Sometimes when you find someone whose brain...
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Deviation.
Why?
From his former lunatic attachment to Kenneth Williams.
It is certainly a deviation from that, but it is not deviation within the game. So therefore, all that can happen is that Derek gets another point, and there are 3 seconds left for empathy, Derek, starting now.
Actually, of course, if you look in Webster's dictionary, you will find quite a different...
Well, Derek Nimmo's bubbling has put him right on the boil to the extent of taking the lead at the end of that round. He has a lead of 1 over Kenneth Williams. And Miriam Carlin, will you begin the next round? Throwing a party. That is the subject. Will you speak about it for just a minute, starting now?
Well, I was sitting minding my own business in Regent's Park, very quietly, sitting watching the ducks and watching going past in the pond, and suddenly this party came up to me, accosted me, and said something very rude in my teeny luggo. So I got hold of him, you see, having learnt the jiu-jitsu and how to do it and all that clever stuff, because I've been watching that program on the television where they do it in black leather. And so I decided to take a course of this, you see, and it came in very, very handy indeed, because after this party had said something extremely rude in my teensy what's-it,
Derek Nimmo, why do you challenge?
Deviation. He said something funny in her teeny what's-it.
Do you say
I mean,
that again?
hesitation.
No,
I don't think you can change a challenge
Oh,
once
no,
you've
you
started.
can't.
No. It was certainly not deviation for a teeny
No,
Watson.
No, I mean, I didn't repeat.
Yes, I
another.
could have given it to you for hesitation, but you were too late with your ideas. So Miriam has another point, and there are 17 seconds for throwing a party, Miriam, starting now.
So I took him up, picked him, and chucked him in the.
Clement Freud, you've challenged what?
She's already done that and is spitting
No, I
all over
didn't.
Derek Nimmo.
No, I hadn't touched him yet.
No, she hadn't actually.
I hadn't.
She told us what she
I told him
intended to
that-
do.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm with you, Miriam. It's all right. She's,
Okay.
as far as I remember, she told us what she intended to do. She hadn't actually done anything yet with this party. He could have done what the hell he liked by this time, couldn't he? So anyway, Miriam, you continue for 13 seconds, throwing a party starting now.
And I chucked him in the canal. And it was floating there and scrabbling around. And
Miriam, you've been challenged.
Oh,
Derek.
really?
No, that's right. But it was repetition of Chuck.
Yes, she did chuck before. So this time, Derek has a point. There
That's
are
all right.
10 seconds left, Derek, for throwing a party starting now.
Everyone back to my place, I cry, and they all come bubbling back on motorcycles and motor cars, scooters and everything. They draw up outside my door.
Kenneth Williams, you've challenged what?
Repetition, the word motor twice.
Oh, no.
Motorcycles, motor cars, yes.
They're all to one word.
They're hyphenated words, aren't they? They're
Well,
not.
I think this is rather quibbling.
Can I-
You're all
what's
holding
that
up again.
happens?
Look
Message, you
at
thought
the
of the
chairman. You've got to have rules. Nicholas Parsons has got to be the presiding ruler.
You haven't heard what decision I'm going to give
No,
you.
but I'm sure it'll be just.
Dear Mester, you thought of a game. Where does a hyphen stand in this
If
game?
they're hyphenated, then they are different words. Motor car is not
Right.
a motorcycle.
There we are then. That's where it means that Kenneth Williams has a point, and there are 4 seconds.
No.
It's just you misheard him, mate.
Don't interrupt the chairman. He knows what he's doing. Leave it alone. That message is no good either.
All right, Derek Nimmo has a point. A good chairman is always allowed to change his mind.
Of course he is.
So, Derek,
Right,
you have
right,
another
darling.
point, and there are 4 seconds left for throwing a party starting now.
I open a bottle of Louise St. George, 1964, with a great plank on the cork, and there the people come, and they say...
Well, as Derek Nimmo was speaking, once again when the whistle went, he gets another point, and his hyphens have gained him extra points, so he has a very definite lead over the others at the end of that round. Kenneth Williams, will you begin the next round? Absolute bliss. I'm sure you've experienced it. You might even have experienced it quite recently, but tell us about it now. 60 seconds starting now.
This, of course, would differ according to the person. An alcoholic would doubtless find absolute bliss if he was locked in a brewery. I find it in the realm of poetry. Indeed, as Tennyson says, infinite bliss was Lancelot's in one kiss from Guinevere. Oh, that moves you, doesn't it? Isn't that really blissful? Doesn't that make you think in terms of heavenly peace and contentment? Which is what the word is about.
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
It doesn't.
But it might to Kenneth Williams, so I think I'm only fair to leave it with Kenneth and say you
You mean
have
it was a
another-
rhetorical question? You didn't really want an answer at all?
Well, no.
Well, try and answer it now. There are 24 seconds left, Kenneth, starting now.
I don't think I can go on.
Derek Nimmo got in first that time.
Well,
you have
hesitation.
another point, Derek. There are 21 seconds for absolute bliss, starting now.
Lying in a field of clover, with my head cushioned upon the grass, I look up into the sky.
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
If it's a field of clover, he can't have his head cushioned.
So there are 14 seconds for you, Clement, having gained your first point, which is very unusual for you, but we often know you to be a late starter. 14 seconds, absolute bliss, starting now.
My idea of absolute bliss is sitting at a long table with a white cloth, a knife, a fork, a spoon, a glass of wine, and thou. Thou doesn't always come.
Derek, you challenged.
Well, 2 people, 2 thous.
Yes, it was a very definite statement, thou, so we have to give you a point on that, Derek, and say there are 2 seconds for absolute bliss, starting now.
Looking up at the swirling clouds.
Once again, Derek got in when the whistle, just before the whistle went, gaining himself 2 more points and giving himself an even longer lead at the end of that round. Clement Freud, will you begin the next round? Tiddlywinks. Will you talk on that delightful pastime, starting now?
It's an extraordinary thing, but if anyone says tiddlywinks, people always laugh. And there's no good reason for this, because as a game, it is one that has enjoyed popularity at universities and in institutions for many centuries in this country and elsewhere. There is...
Kenneth Williams.
Don't you want to hear about this game?
Hesitation, Kenneth. You have the subject. 42 seconds for Tiddlywinks, starting now.
This is a game played with curious little discs, and something which I've seen being done, but I have never indulged in myself, because I've always thought that the kind of people that play it are slightly deficient mentally.
Well, you have to tiddle and they wink in return, you see, as you do the aforesaid motions with these little discs on the actual board.
Derek Nimmo, why would you...
Repetition of discs.
Yes, we've had discs before, Kenneth. So
Well, I've
there
got
are
a slip one, too,
17 and a half seconds for you, Derek, on Tiddlywinks, starting now.
Well, I think the best way to play the game is if you have the red counters, you put them on the table, press with the large one on one of the smaller ones, which leaps into the air, and you hope it will go into the receptacle that you put there for that purpose. If you're...
Derek's vivid description of a game of Tiddlywinks takes him even further into the lead at the end of that round. Kenneth, will you begin the next round? Friendship. Will you talk about that for just a minute, starting now?
This is something I'm particularly adept at describing. It's about sharing. And this probably is what the whole of life really amounts to. Perhaps it was best expressed by George Eliot in that lovely passage, the inexpressible comfort of feeling safe with a person, having neither to weigh thoughts nor measure words, but pour it all out chaff and grain together, knowing that a faithful hand will take and sift it, keep what is worth keeping, and with a breath of kindness, blow the rest away. And I first read that in 1952, and I thought it summed up friendship in the most poetic way and probably the most beautiful way. Oh, I've said way twice.
You were saying it so beautifully, though, Kenneth. I think they might have overlooked your transgression and let you go on just to hear you. But Clement Freud got in with his challenge, and there are 13 seconds left for friendship, starting now.
My greatest friendship did, in fact, take place in George Eliot's passage late one evening when we met one another and our eyes held, hers blue, mine green, my...
Well, as Clement Freud was speaking, the whistle went, he gains yet another point, and he's now in third place. Derek, will you begin the next round? Lending a hand. There's a delightful subject for you to talk on, if you can, for 60 seconds, starting now.
I think it's awfully important, if one can, to lend a hand as one goes through life, particularly to friends. I remember particularly when I was first married.
Kenneth, why have you challenged?
Too particularly.
There were two particulars, yes, very cleverly spotted, Kenneth. And there are 51 seconds left for lending a hand, Kenneth Williams, starting now.
Well, to lend a hand is a very gallant thing indeed, because the assumption must be that you are going to be without one for some time. And therefore, it is something I do not indulge in. And when they say, would you loan me your palm, I say categorically, get out of it. You're getting nothing out of me, I cry. And consequently, I have a reputation.
Derek, why have you challenged?
Deviation, because he's talking about not lending a hand rather than lending a hand.
That is true. It's very valid. Quite valid.
Derek Nimmo, Kenneth admits you have a point, and you take over the subject of lending a hand with 23 seconds left, starting now.
Living in my first home with my spouse, one night we were lying in bed together.
Kenneth and his wife.
Deviation.
Kenneth, I disagree. There's nothing devious about lying in bed.
Lending a hand, laying in bed.
In all fairness, leave it with Derek and say there are 18 seconds left for lending a hand, Derek, starting now.
I'd taken back with me that night Archie Andrews. I was working with Peter Brough at the time, and he had a spare hand attached to his body. And as I was lying there with my aforesaid lawful wedded wife, I put one hand on her shoulder, another hand on her leg, and then I put the third hand...
Clement Freud, why are you chanting? ask if that was an anticipatory challenge. Is his challenge in anticipation justified, Derek?
Not at all. It was just that when she counted there were 3 hands, she screamed rather loudly. It just happens to be true.
Clement,
it's such a change to tell the truth on this program.
Why are you challenging, Clement?
Too many hands, repetition of hands.
Oh, that is absolutely right. There's too many hands, yes. The subject is lending a hand. You can repeat that more than once, but you can't...
I had to. The story had 3 hands. We wouldn't barely pointed if I only said 1.
Anyway, there are 3 seconds left for you, Clement, on lending a hand, starting now.
Coming out of Waterloo Station late one summer's evening.
Well, the situation's still the same. Derek is still in the lead, Kenneth is following, Clement behind that, and Miriam trailing a little.
Whoa.
Clement, will you talk to us for 60 seconds about making coffee, starting now?
Making coffee is a very simple thing, and there are more snobs who tell you more untrue things than almost any other subject. Ideally, what you need is a saucepan, some water, some reasonably well-ground coffee, and heat, which turns the water to a temperature at which it dissolves the coffee, whereafter it can be percolated into a jug before it is placed into a cup. But there are those...
Derek, why have you challenged?
This is rather dreary. I'm always mumbling on.
However dreary it may be, it is still playing the game, so Clement gets another point, and there are 32 seconds left, Clement, making coffee starting now.
But there are actually people who appear on television programs who advise you to purchase green beans and roast them yourself, and when they've become the required colour...
Kenneth, why have you challenged?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, I quite agree, Kenneth. You take over the subject of making coffee. 21 seconds left, starting now.
The best thing to do is to get your instant bran, put a teaspoonful in the cook.
Clement, why do you challenge?
Deviation. It's quite clearly not the best thing.
I'm making a coffee, dearie. You've done your bit with all that percolating.
This is one of those very difficult things. I would agree with Clement Freud, because I think this is much better coffee. But on the other hand, Kenneth Williams may prefer the other kind of coffee. So what do I do? I'll leave it to you, may I? If you agree on this coffee issue with Clement Freud and his challenge, will you cheer? If you disagree, will you please boo? And will you all do it together now? They all like that filthy muck that you like.
Philistines.
So there we are. They are the final judges in this show, and there are 18 seconds left for you, Kenneth Williams, making coffee starting now.
And then you pour into the made cup of coffee the milk or cream. Cream is nice.
Clement, you've challenged.
It's double cream.
A double cream. Yes, that's right. Clement has a point, and he takes over the subject for 10 seconds left, starting now.
Some people take sugar and some not, and the Turks...
Kenneth, why do you challenge?
Two sums. Some people take sugar and some not.
Yes, but we've never challenged on sums and ifs and ands and buts and these before, no. No, I think what I'll do, Kenneth, I don't think we can have it for some. I think we'll just forget about that and say that there are 6 seconds left with Clement Freud still talking about making coffee starting now.
Some people take sugar and some not, and the Turks, above all...
You challenged.
Repetition of those Turks.
Not only the Turks, but the
sums. And
yes, I think once you've said sums twice, if you say it 4 times, it is repetition. So, Derek, you have another point. There are 2 seconds for making coffee starting now.
A lovely silver pot into which I put...
Well, this is turning out to be a battle, I think, between Derek Nimmo and Kenneth Williams. There's about 2 or 3 points between them, and Derek is still in the lead at the end of that round. Miriam Carlin, will you begin the next round? Chocolate sponge. Will you talk about that for 60 seconds starting now?
And a terrible mess it makes in the bath, too. I personally prefer a coffee loofah with which to scrub my back. But since the subject was chocolate...
Derek, why have you challenged?
Yes,
our hesitation, alas, because we were fascinated with her chocolate sponge in the bath.
Yes, so was I.
And there are 47 seconds for chocolate sponge, Derek, starting now.
I prefer to buy mine from a certain shop in Piccadilly. I go there in a hansom cab with outriders and 2 liveried footmen.
Kenneth, why have you challenged?
Deviation. It's not about chocolate sponge, it's about how he goes to a shop. And a handsome
To buy
cab.
my chocolate sponge.
Yes, to buy his
Deviation.
chocolate
To
sponge.
buy my
I
chocolate
don't believe that he
sponge.
goes to buy a chocolate sponge with outriders. I think that is a very devious way of buying any chocolate sponge. So, Kenneth, you have a point, and there are 40 seconds left for chocolate sponge starting now.
Chocolate sponge should be as light as a souffle and coated over with this delicious nectarine, as you might say, and the teeth sink into this succulence, this piquancy, and all the muck clings to your lips, and the gelatinous glue-like sweetness of it.
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Deviation.
Why?
Well, if it's as light as a souffle, it can't be gelatinous muck glue.
There are 16 seconds. Chocolate sponge, Clement, starting now.
By far the best way of making this is with chocolate sponge powder. You simply purchase the commodity, add water, and pour it into a grease basin whereafter a preheated oven receives the goodies and cooks it in...
I never thought to hear so much twaddle about chocolate sponge in my life. But that is the end, not only of the round, but also the end of the game, alas. And at the end of that game, Miriam Carlin was fourth, Clement Freud for once was third, Kenneth Williams was a very, very keen, good second. But he didn't manage to catch up and beat this week's winner, Derek Nimmo. We do hope you've enjoyed this particular edition of Just a Minute, and from all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch. We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Sheila Hancock in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And once more, we have these four clever experts of the game who are going to try and speak for just a minute on some unlikely subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviation. And if they can do that, they will gain points, and if not, the others will challenge them and try and win points themselves. This is the way we play, this is the way we score, and Clement Freud, will you begin this week? The subject is Bacchus. Can you talk for 60 seconds about Bacchus, starting now?
Bacchus was a Greek all-action, loose-living, wine-swilling god. I suppose if one looked for a similar person today, you would think of Derek Nimmo. Debonair, long, fair hair, always wore new suits. And
Sheila Hancock, you have challenged. Why?
Deviation. Derek Nimmo hasn't got long, fair hair.
I'm not going to judge about Derek Nimmo's hair in public. Right away, I'm going to put the very first decision to our audience. Will you please be the judges of whether Derek Nimmo has long, fair hair? If you think he has, will you cheer? If you think he hasn't, will you boo? And will you all do it together now? Derek, the general opinion is that you haven't got long, fair hair.
I'm not terribly interested either way.
So what's the decision? So, Sheila, you said it was devious because he has, and he hasn't. So, Sheila, you have won a point, and you take over the subject with 41 seconds left, starting now.
When I...
Derek, you have challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, I'm afraid there was a hesitation. So, Derek, you gain a point this time, and you take over the subject of Bacchus with 40 seconds left, starting now.
Well, I was standing outside the Mersey Tunnel, you see, and this fellow came over to me and he said, would you mind backing us into the road over there? So I said, fine, yes, I don't mind.
Kenneth Williams, you have challenged. Why?
Because we're not discussing the god Bacchus any longer. We're discussing backing us in, which is not the subject, I think.
We have not established that it's the subject. I actually said Bacchus. And so you can obviously interpret that as the god Bacchus, or you can take it as Bacchus if you wish. So Derek Nemo has a point because I don't agree with Kenneth Williams' challenge. It means he continues talking about Bacchus for 34 seconds, starting now.
The most beautiful statue I ever saw of Bacchus was in Herculaneum. In one of the temples there, very close to the sea, there's this wonderful statue, which I've already said twice.
Clement Freud, you've challenged.
Repetition of statue.
Repetition, Derek has committed it. So, Clement, I agree with you. You take a point, and you have 27 seconds left for Bacchus, starting now.
Viticulture probably owes more to this particular Greek god than any
Derek Nimmer, why have you challenged?
Repetition of the word Greek god.
Yes, that is right. We had Greek god earlier on. So, Derek, you have another point, and there are 22 seconds left for Bacchus, starting now.
I awfully like the Titian picture of Bacchus. It stands in my hall at the moment, or a replica thereof, with a beautiful green sword.
Clement Freud, you challenged.
Hesitation.
Hesitation, I agree. There are 12 seconds left for Bacchus, Clement, starting now.
Many people think that if this person appeared in this present day and age...
Kenneth Williams, you challenged. Hesitation, I agree.
Williams,
I knew we've ever had
Williams.
so many points scored in one round before. So, Kenneth, you've now got a point, and there are 7 seconds left for Bacchus, starting now.
Well, he's usually pictured as a rather hairy, pot-bellied old fool, obviously stoned out of his mind.
That whistle, which was superbly blown by Ian Messiter, tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking then gains another point. In this case, it was Kenneth Williams. So, Kenneth, will you begin this one for us? The subject is, what sends me? You've had a little thought. You've got a look of shock on your face, but could you start on that subject for 60 seconds now?
The most significant thing that ever sent me was an order paper demanding that I appear for a medical for Her Majesty's forces. And it sent me all the way to a castle in Carlisle, and I was made to take my clothes off and go into a cubicle. And they stuck things into me, and they said it was to get a sample of blood, because they didn't think mine looked very healthy. Eventually, they couldn't make up their minds, and I was consigned to Harley Street, if you please, where they said B2, quite definitely, B... Oh, I've...
Clement Freud, you challenge.
Repetition.
Repetition. The thing to do, Kenneth, is to keep on and hope they haven't noticed your repetition.
I know, it's quite a good anecdote.
Yeah. Well, you went on for about 36 seconds. Clement, there are 24 seconds left for What Sends Me, starting now.
At Fakenham Racecourse last Saturday afternoon at 3:15, a horse wearing my inimitable colours of black and orange with spots on the cap jumped over the last fence, got a lead of 12 lengths over the second, and romped home to win fractionally by a neck.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Well, where is this sending him?
It's going to send me to the winner's enclosure if you shut up.
I don't think it's very nice to say to your partner, shut up.
Actually, he's your opponent, you know.
Yes, I've always shown him the greatest courtesy, haven't I? I've always shown him the greatest courtesy and affection, I have.
You say that. He treats you like
Treats you like a load of rubbish. Well, I think it's disgusting.
Anyway, Kenneth, I agree. He took the best part of 20 seconds to establish that there was something that was going to send him. So as he hadn't got there in 20 seconds, I think it's only fair to agree with you, give you a point, and the subject for 6 seconds, What Sends Me, starting now.
So they got hold of me, you see, and shoved me in this 1,500-weight truck, and they said to me, you're in, B2 or otherwise, mate, and you can walk. Well, I was
Derek Nimmo challenged. We let you go because we wanted to hear what happened, actually. Derek, why do you challenge?
Well, it was some time ago, actually, but a repetition of holding him.
Of
holding him?
Holding him?
They held him before.
When did they hold him before?
Who did?
Nobody else.
Those fellows
The
were
people
holding
who
him
stuck
before.
things
They
into
weren't.
him.
They were shoving things into him before. They weren't holding him. I don't remember you being held before. Were you held before, Kenneth?
No!
You were only held once.
Since.
He keeps on, look at him, he keeps gulping that water. I think he's a bit derailed. He's upset, I think.
You were only held once in Harley Street, weren't you?
Oh, did I say held there? Did I
You
say
were held in Harley Street. Were you held twice in Harley Street?
No.
Kenneth, you have 4 seconds for What Sends Me, starting now.
So anyway, trudging across this open moor with in each hand the naffy cans of tea.
Well, as Kenneth was speaking, at the end of that round, he has got not only another point, but a very definite lead over all the others. Sheila Hancock, will you begin the next round for us? The subject is how I feel. Oh, don't look like that, because you look as if you feel awful. But, Sheila, will you try and talk on that subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
Usually I stretch out my hand, flex my fingers, and touch whatever I'm feeling. If it's a person, I touch them very gently. If it's a piece of material, I rub them between my hands. Also, there is an emotional sort of feeling. Usually I feel pretty awful.
Very nimble, you challenge.
Well, I challenged before she swore. Hesitation.
Yes, that's the one. Derek, there are 44 seconds left for how I feel, starting now.
I feel at the moment absolutely frightful because I have conjunctivitis of the right eye. But fortunately, I was lent some liniment or some liquid by the lady sitting next to me to pour into it a moment ago, which has in some sort of measure affected a tiny hesitation.
Clement Freud, you've challenged. Hesitation, Clement, I agree. There are 31 seconds left for how I feel, starting now.
I feel quite astonishingly well. I have 10 toes which have been neatly cut. My feet are well manicured or pedicured, as I think the word should be.
Derek Nimmer, you've challenged. Why?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, I agree. Yes, they're very, very near things, but we've all had one. 22 seconds for you, Derek, with how I feel, starting now.
So sometimes...
Clement Freud, you've challenged. Why?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, Clement. There are 21 seconds left for how I feel, starting now.
Moving gently up my body, my shins are in good shape, my knees...
Hesitation.
Yes, once you started moving up Clement Freud's body, he shouted it.
Anybody would hesitate, let's face it.
In this case, he hesitated himself. So, Sheila, you have another point, and there are 16 seconds left for how I feel, starting now.
In the mornings, I usually feel pretty awful. By coffee break, however, I usually feel a bit better. At lunchtime, I'm usually hungry. At tea time, I feel peckish, but I don't feel too bad.
Derek Nimmer, you've challenged.
Too much feeling.
There's never too much feeling in my life, Derek.
No. I don't think you could have too much feeling where Sheila was concerned, but I do agree. On this particular game and this particular round, we can have too much feeling. So, Derek, you have another point and the subject. 4 seconds left, starting now.
Absolute nausea is the emotion that comes over me at this very moment as I look across at that bearded figure.
Well, at the end of that round, Derek Nimmo, coming in at the last burst there at the end, has got another couple of points, and he is now in the lead. Derek, will you begin the next round for us? The subject is drag. Can you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
There are several meanings to the word drag. One is the apparel worn by a male transvestite. Or, of course, it can be when an entertainer, a comedian, likes to wear ladies' clothes. That is called drag as well, do you see? Now, I had a dresser in the theatre who was awfully kind and helpful, and in the evenings he used to go out and do a little turn in shows. And when he did, he was 6'5", an American, very large. He used to wear these very pretty feminine apparel. Now, I remember one day a major general came to see me with his good lady, and I'd forgotten it was the night for my friend to go out on one of his little expeditions. And I said, would you care to bring me a drink? And he said, coming, Mr. Nimmo, coming. And in he came, and he had a lovely long gown with a tiara and lovely hair and earrings and beautiful fur coat and stole and long gloves. And the soldier looked at him somewhat agape, and he said, oh, sir, now what would you have to drink? Would you like a gin and tonic, or would you like some whiskey? And he said, well, I just had one.
Sheila,
I had to do it.
Sheila has another point, and there are 5 seconds left for drag Sheila, starting now.
You can talk of things being a drag, and I find that life is sometimes a drag. Have I actually won?
That scream of ecstasy came from Sheila, who was feeling something then. She was feeling excited because she thinks it's the first time she's actually been speaking with the whistle went.
It is.
And you're now in second place, Sheila, alongside Clement, who are with one ahead of Kenneth and just behind Derek, who's still in the lead. Putting a bold face on it. That's the subject, and it's your turn to begin, Kenneth. So can you put a bold face on it and try and speak for 60 seconds on that subject, starting now?
This is something one frequently has to do in public, and one of the occasions where it is most noticeable is the interview, which is apparently impromptu, when you suddenly have this thing shot at you from the blue without suspecting it, and it proved to be extremely embarrassing. It happened to me quite recently, and this gentleman, who had written a large tome on the subject of the Irish Rebellion which took place in 1780, said suddenly to me, "Why should you," he said, "why should you be showing your face here in Ireland after the dreadful things your country's done, you dreadful English people?" I said, "I'm Welsh, dear." Nothing to do with me, I said.
Kenneth,
But it was putting a bold face, you see what I mean?
Yes.
I put a bold face on it. I thought, I'm not letting get the better of me, you know, calling me a dirty Englishman and all this filth.
Yes,
Was it
well,
disgrace?
yes, I know, but you have gone on for a minute and a half, actually. But about 40 seconds ago, you were challenged. But we were all enjoying it so much that we let you go, because they really did love it.
Oh, well, I was quite worked up anyway. Yes, I was.
But Clement Freud challenged. I hope I can remember why he challenged. Why was it, Clement?
Repetition of suddenlies and dreadfuls. But it was a long time ago.
Yes, it was a long time ago. There were a lot of dreadfuls and a lot of suddenlies. Well, there we are. We have to play the game, and it's quite true. You did say it more than once.
Yeah, so he gets the time.
Yeah, but you had a huge laugh, and we loved it. So Clement Freud has another point, and there are 21 seconds left for putting a bold face on it, Clement, starting now.
When I was 11 years old, I was given a doll which had a pathetic visage. And my mother said to me, in order to make this doll seem more startlingly real to the other people, it is essential to put upon it a bold face. And we went down Regent Street in order to purchase some impediment to its...
Well, as Clement Freud was speaking again, when the whistle went, he gains another point, and he now has a lead of 1 over all the others. Sheila Hancock, will you begin the next round? Here's a delightful subject, arguing with a man. And you should be able to speak about that, seeing you've been in this program so often. Sheila, that's the subject. 60 seconds starting now.
This is a thing that I do my level best not to get into. The best thing for a woman to do when faced with a man in an argumentative mood is to be very feminine, very sweet, and very charming, and say, "Yes, dear."
Kenneth, why have you
Very.
That's pretty very.
Oh, yes, but all right, after this, we're not going to challenge on things like very and it and and the and...
Aren't we?
No.
Oh, well, I withdraw it then. Go on.
No,
because you had one against you on suddenly as well.
Oh, well,
so
I withdraw it. I do. I really
No,
do.
don't.
I do. I withdraw the whole thing.
Don't. Go
Let her
on.
go on. No, go on, Nick.
No, if she
Yes,
said
go
very,
on. There's
very,
got to
very-
be rules. You've got to have your
Well,
rules.
this isn't a rule.
Yes,
the
go
rule,
on.
The rule
On,
is
dear.
she can't repeat herself, and she did do it 3 times. So, Kenneth, you have a point.
Fair's
and
fair.
you have...
I'm not going to argue with you, Ken. It's your point.
49 seconds, Kenneth, for arguing with a man, starting now.
Well, of course, it's something I do frequently. I was doing it before this show began. And as a matter of fact, I was...
Sheila, why do you challenge?
Deviation. He was arguing with me, and I'm a woman.
Oh, she doesn't go on. Oh, she's sharp. Oh.
In the circumstances, it's only fair to give the subject straight back to you, Sheila, with another well-deserved point, and 43 seconds left, starting now.
The awful thing is that men always fall back on saying things that's just like a woman. It's usually something to do with logic. There is this extraordinary idea ingrained in men that women are not logical.
Clement, why have you challenged?
That was too logical.
Yeah.
No, it
too
wasn't. She said logic
Logic
first,
and logical.
logical secondly.
You see the look on Kenneth Williams' face now? That's the look he had when he was arguing with us before the show. Yes, I'm
I
afraid...
buzzed before the L came out.
Oh, the deviation.
Yes, and therefore you deserve not to win the point
Yes,
because you were
yes.
being too keen.
I give it back.
So Sheila has another point.
Yes, he's contrite now. He's contrite.
That's repetition. 32 seconds left, Sheila, arguing with a man, starting now.
What it means when they say that is that a woman is usually more intelligent than a man, but they have to have these futile things to say to you because they will never admit this fact. What I usually do is to smile and say, "Yes, I agree with you." All the time, I agree with you because you are the superior...
She agreed too much. So, Clement, you have 14 seconds left for arguing with a man starting now.
It is absolutely essential that the man you get is a proper sort of gentle person who is going to shout back at you in the right tone of voice. And for this, no one is better than Kenneth Williams, to whom you can go up and say, "Williams, you swine, you beast."
Well, Cameron Freud has a slightly larger lead at the end of that round. Derek Nimmo, will you begin the next round? Strange customs. Can you speak on that subject for just a minute, starting now?
Well, of course, a lot of customs are very strange. I think our own ones have become even stranger recently. Now they have the red light and the green light. It does make it awfully difficult to know which one to go through. I was going through the only the other day, and the fellows came up to me. I was going through the one which you go when you want to not declare, and when you
sorry,
want
who pressed
to...
that buzzer
I
first? No, Sheila, why do you challenge?
Well, he is going through an awful lot,
yes,
isn't
he did actually go through 3 times.
I haven't actually got through yet.
Anyway, the message got through to Sheila, who challenged and gains a point.
I can't think of anything to say. That's
Well, you
clean.
hurry up then.
42 seconds left, Sheila, starting now.
Usually customs have some sort of truth way back in antiquity. For instance, men lifting their hats to women is a custom, and I believe it was something to do with their wigs, but I can't remember what. Also, hold your collar, never swallow, never catch the fever was something that you did when the death carts went by in olden days, because if you didn't, you breathed in disease and probably died. However...
Kenneth, why have you challenged?
I've not come here to listen to a load of filth. A load of filth about disease and bring out your dead. I don't want to sit here after supposed to be entertaining half hour. Never heard such a load of morbid filth in my life. I'm surprised at her, a mother at that.
The subject is customs, and it's also strange ones. It's a very strange custom to sit down. It wouldn't be strange to listen to Kenneth Williams going off about the show. So I disagree entirely, Kenneth, but we loved hearing you say it. Sheila has another point, and there are 15 seconds left, starting now.
I did meet a very strange customs officer at London Airport once who had red hair and...
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Repetition, we've already met him.
It's a different one, it's not yours.
Withdraw the challenge.
Sheila has another point, and there are 11 seconds left for strange customs. Sheila, starting now.
This one had red hair and freckles and very long arms, and he wanted to open my suitcase, although it was patently obvious that I had nothing in. However, he seemed very intrigued by certain... Oh, I am relieved. I didn't want to tell you how strange he was.
When Sheila took over that subject, she said, I can't talk about this. But she managed to do it so successfully, and she was challenged so many times without any success, that she's gained, I don't know, about 5 or 6 points in that round, and now has the lead.
Oh, no. Oh, it's great.
Is it nearly the end?
Is it nearly the end? No, it isn't. We're now going to have free speech, which I think is a very apt subject to come at this moment. And Clement Freud, it's your turn to begin. 60 seconds, starting now.
Headmaster, Your Grace, I expect you're wondering how much I've had to pay for these few words with which I'm about to address you, and I will answer your query immediately. Nothing. Nothing at all.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
2 nothings.
I agree. You take over the subject with 44 seconds left. Free speech, starting now.
Of course, it's becoming increasingly difficult in this country to exercise the right of free speech.
Kenneth Williams, why...
Deviation is completely untrue. The right of free speech is certainly not in any way threatened in this country at all.
Well,
Quite right. Absolutely right.
Whether we entirely agree, I do agree that it is not increasingly difficult, as Derek said. That is utterly untrue. That he said free speech was becoming increasingly difficult. That is untrue. So I agree with you, Kenneth. You take the subject, 39 seconds left, free speech, starting now.
This is something that has been fought for in Europe by some of the most enlightened liberal statesmen and philosophers for many years, and is an extremely valuable thing. We should none of us take it lightly. We should go down on our knees and
thank those wonderful people that made it possible for us to shout the
Clement Freud, you've challenged.
Hesitation.
Yeah, you didn't make it possible for him to shout the odds. So, Clement, I agree with you. You have another point, and there are 12 seconds left for free speech starting now.
It is a very marvellous thing in this country to be able to go to Hyde Park Corner on a Sunday morning, stand on a soapbox.
Sheila, why have you challenged?
Deviation. It isn't actually Hyde Park Corner where people stand on soapboxes.
One can go to Hyde Park Corner. There's no...
Sheila,
the whole point about free speech is you don't have to go to Marble Arch. You can go to Hyde Park Corner.
I was just about to support you in exactly the same way, Clement. He actually
it's all so exciting. We're coming up to close now, aren't we?
We're all getting
narrowing.
But that's an interesting, intelligent news item, isn't it, that I gave you there? Because it isn't Hyde Park Corner, is it? Where everybody goes. Everybody always says it's Hyde Park Corner, and it isn't. It's
I
Marble
know,
Arch.
and they don't know what Marble Arch is for. They don't know that it's to celebrate Nelson's victories, you see. They don't know that. They all think it's just a great marble arch. They think it's made of marble. It's not. It's Poland stone.
Anyway.
So there's little bits of knowledge.
Freud said it is possible to go to Hyde Park Corner, which is perfectly correct within the game, so he gets another point, and he continues with 6
Well, he'd
seconds.
get run over if he did.
Don't get run over for the next 6 seconds, Clement, and continue on free speech starting now.
Towards the end of the Second World War, soldiers of both victorious armies massed together at the...
Unfortunately, at the end of that subject, we come to the end of this particular show, and I think that was a very apt subject on which to finish this Just a Minute, because if ever there was a program in which free speech was allowed, it is this one. No 4 people are freer in their speech, and the things they say sometimes are quite outrageous, and none of them are censored, so there's a good example. And free speech took Clement Freud at the end of that round into a small lead. Sheila didn't get her last challenge. If she had, she would have won. As it was, she didn't. She came second. 3rd place was Derek, 4th place was Kenneth, and this week's winner was, as I said before, Clement Freud. I'm sorry that is all we have time for, because we have really enjoyed, as always, playing Just a Minute. We do hope that you've enjoyed listening to it. We hope that the audience have enjoyed it as well. And goodbye from us all.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by Simon Brent. We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Amy MacDonald in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And as you just heard, we welcome back to the show lovely Amy MacDonald, who is going to represent the ladies and try and do battle with these 3 stalwart, devastating men who are so frightening the way they play the game. I'm sure you're going to do very well, Amy. May I remind you, it's just as before. I'm going to ask them to try and speak for just a minute on some unlikely subject without hesitation, without deviation, and without repeating themselves in any way at all. If they can do that, they will gain points, and the others may challenge them if they think they are guilty of not doing it. This is the way we play, and I think the rest will become apparent as we continue. And Kenneth Williams, we'd like you to begin this week. The subject is policemen. Can you talk on that subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, quite recently, one of them came up to me and said, say something funny. And I couldn't think of anything even remotely comical at that particular period. But I went later to a banquet given by 400 policemen, H Division actually, and was asked to make a speech. I got up there and I said to him, I said, the mask of tragedy and the mask of comedy are but one.
Derek Nimmo, why do you challenge?
2 masks.
2 masks, yes, I quite agree. That was a repetition.
Oh, you're a fool to yourself.
But I agree with your challenge, Derek, so that means you gain a point and you take over the subject with 31 seconds for policemen, starting now.
Well, like Kenneth Williams, I too enjoy police balls. I went to one...
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Repetition.
Yes, I agree with the challenge. You gain a point and you take over the subject with 28 seconds left. Policeman, starting now.
On my way to the studio this evening, I came through Hyde Park, and a policeman came up to me by most belligerently
Kenneth Williams,
rapping his knuckles against the window of my car.
Kenneth Williams
And I
has
stopped
challenged
and I
you.
said, take your...
Yes, it was hesitation.
It was a hesitation. So, Kenneth, I agree with the hesitation, and you take a point, and there are 21 seconds left for policemen, starting now.
Policemen can be extremely useful in a ticklish situation, and when I was apprehended once by a dreadful lout, I called for the aforesaid mentioned dignitary.
Amy MacDonald, why have you challenged?
Deviation. He's talking about louts now.
Yes.
Yes.
I didn't.
Yes.
I didn't.
Yes.
I
Oh,
didn't say
yes.
anything of the kind.
You did say about a lout? Yes.
Well,
you
that's
did.
apropos of calling the policeman. I started off by saying
Yes,
how
but you were
useful
going
they
to
are.
go on about him being a lout.
Oh, yes. You can't have that. With a lady present.
Go on a bit. So ungallant.
Well, perhaps I should go into purger or something.
So, Amy, you have gained your first point, and you have 6 seconds left for policemen, starting now.
Policemen are usually very tall and masculine. They wear navy blue uniforms.
Well, the whistle going there tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Amy MacDonald. You'll never believe the subject that's coming up for the next round. It's called rubbish. Amy, will you try and talk on the subject of rubbish for 60 seconds, starting now?
There are very different forms of rubbish. One is the sort of rubbish that one puts in one's garbage can. There's another sort of rubbish, which is what one talks sometimes. A lot of people talk rubbish. Politicians, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud.
Derek Nimmo, you challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
I talk very good sense.
You talk very good rubbish as well. So Amy MacDonald has another point in 42 seconds. To continue with rubbish, starting now.
I always seem to have an awful lot of rubbish because I collect a lot of things. And once in a while, I have a great big clearing out session in which I throw out all my rubbish. I usually have collected by this time a great deal, i.e. old letters,
Clement Freud, you challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes. So, Clement, I agree this time. You have a point, and there are 21 seconds left for rubbish, starting now.
Some time ago in the city of London, there was a strike of refuse collectors, as a result of which we had one of the finest assemblies of tin cans, cardboard boxes, old pieces of toast, new lumps of bacon
Kenneth
rind.
Williams, you challenged. Hesitation. Kenneth, you take over the subject of rubbish with 7 seconds left, starting now.
We were all reminded during the recent strike what wonderful men
Clement
those
Freud,
people
why did you
are,
challenge?
and I think we should pay tribute. I think we
You've
should
been
all
challenged,
pay tribute.
Kenneth.
Tribute to the greatness. of
Clement,
those
why
men.
did you challenge?
And the people that
Why
go
was
down
it devious?
sewers. That was
Because
why
the
people go
strike
down
was-
sewers.
Why did you challenge?
Deviation.
Why?
The strike was not recent.
To some people, recent means last week. To others, it means last month or even the month before. Therefore, Kenneth, I agree with you. You have another point, and there are 3 seconds left for rubbish, starting now.
Those noble dustmen, I salute them. Even as they come round the corner, I cry out, lovely lads! Good for you, lads!
He's still going on. Never anybody go on after the whistle for such a long time. But, Kenneth, you have got the lead now.
Oh, lovely. Oh,
A very
lovely.
definite lead at the end of that round. But, Derek Nimmo, it is your turn to begin the next round. Hummingbirds. Will you talk on that subject for just a minute, starting now?
When I was going through Jesmond Dean in Newcastle some 3.5 weeks ago, it was a Thursday afternoon, round about 3:30, and all of a sudden, over a convent wall, I heard a droning sound. I looked over this aforesaid piece of stonework, and there I saw a collection of convent girls, all in a circle, and going, very short ones, so it wouldn't be repetitious, you see. And then I said, what are you doing, little lady?
Amy MacDonald, you've challenged. Why?
Deviation. Well, he hasn't actually said hummingbirds yet, has he?
Oh, but I think
not
he's made it
talking
quite
about-
clear to us that those little girls in there were humming birds. You see, as you're a very pretty little bird yourself, Amy, you don't realise that that's how we chaps talk about girls, you see. So, Derek Nimmo has another point, and there are 33 seconds left for hummingbirds, starting now.
Well, the first time I ever met one, I went into a dance hall in Liverpool, the Grafton Rooms, and I went over to this very pretty woman sitting on the side, and I said, excuse me, could I have the pleasure of this dance? She said, no, ask me, mate, I'm sweating. And I must say, she was really quite the hummiest bird that I've ever met. And then after that, I went to the tropics of Africa, and there I saw a lovely flight in the sky of little tiny birds coming towards me, and I thought, oh, I know what they are! They are, I know, hummingbirds! My goodness, what a thrill! And I snapped away.
Well, that is the first time for quite a time that somebody who has started with the subject, in spite of interruptions, has also finished with it, which Derek Nimmo did just then. Congratulations, Derek. You have another 2 points through that round, and your hummingbird certainly, you kept going marvellously through the audience laughter, too. But you're only in second place, alas, at the end of that round. Kenneth is still in the lead. Clement Freud, will you begin the next round? My fans. Will you talk about them? 60 seconds, starting now.
My fans are numerous. There is, to begin with, a Mrs. Johnson who lives at 14 Railway Cottages, Burnley, and also Miss Violet.
Derek, you're challenged.
The hesitation, because
Yes.
he can't remember Violet's surname.
I don't think he can remember his fan.
That's
This is
right.
completely dried
That
up
was
after
the
Violet.
problem.
So there we are. 47 seconds, Derek, for my fans, starting now.
Well, I have a most wonderful collection of fans, actually. I keep them in a glass case in my dining room. Some of them are Chinese ones, which are made, some with feathers, really. I've got a lovely peacock feathered fan, which is really the pride of my collection.
Clement, why have you challenged?
The feathers.
Peacock feathered fan.
We had a repetition of feathers.
I don't remember it.
Oh, I do. Yes.
Rubbish. Absolute rubbish.
Clement Freud's family says yes. What do the rest of the audience say? Have we had a repetition of feathers? If you agree, will you cheer? If you disagree, will you boo? And will you all do it together now? We have not had a repetition.
You wait.
They will have to wait. 37 seconds, Derek, for you to continue with my fans, starting now.
Well, there is also a lady...
Kenneth Williams, why do you... Hesitation, Kenneth, I agree. You take over the subject of my fans. 35 seconds, starting now.
I'm made of rice paper, and in moments of great heat or passion, I frequently move them agitatedly so as to create a sort of breeze, or eo, or zephyr, as some people call them. My ardour may be cooled. I'm always fanning me ardour, you see.
Clement Freud challenged you before that.
A repetition of ha. He went ha 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 ha.
A very clever challenge, yes, true. So, Clement, I quite agree, and even clever way of challenging them, hesitation. 18 seconds left, Clement. My fans, starting now.
Many of them write to me, often on envelopes which have no stamps, which means that I have to pay an extra 8p, in some cases 10p, in order to receive such communications as they have.
Derek,
decided.
why have you challenged?
I can't believe they're fans if they write them without putting stamps.
I can, if they're Clement Freud's fans. So Clement Freud has another point, and there are 7 seconds left, my fans, starting now.
You are absolutely my favorite tap, is the usual beginning, although there are some that start, Dear Mr. Freud.
Well, as Clement Freud was speaking when the whistle went, then he gains an extra point. It's a very interesting situation now. The three men are equal in the lead, and Amy is only just a little way behind the chaps. Kenneth, will you begin the next round? My best points. Were they the ones you were fanning in the last round? Anyway, will you talk about them for just a minute if you can, starting now?
I very nearly wasn't able to because you practically took the words out of my mouth. But the nose has been likened to the Black Wall Tunnel, and the neck to a swan, later in actual fact, and the lips are generous to a fault. I've had that said to me. What an orifice, I've had that. They said. And the resonance, of course, you will note that the voice has this mellifluous carrying quality. Oh, it floats upon the ear like the sweet south that breathes upon a bank of violets, stealing and giving odor. Oh, I almost stun myself sometimes with the talent, with the listing of your good points, you see. And I think it's a good...
Amy MacDonald, why have you challenged?
Repetition.
What?
Well, he's going on about himself all the time.
You never put it better, Amy. He really is going on about himself. But as it's my best points of the subject, I think he's entitled to go on for once. So, Kenneth, I will let you continue to go on about yourself. And there are 14 seconds left, starting now.
Well, it was suggested I dye my hair, because somebody said that's not one of your best points, I can tell you. But I thought, no, weekly I'd have to be coping with the chemicals, and the roots would probably go rotten. I had seen somebody else's, and they went green.
Well, once again in this... Control yourself, Kenneth.
Have I leapt in?
Yeah. Beg your pardon?
In the lead.
Oh, yes, I see what you mean. Yes, you definitely leapt into the lead.
Oh, I hope I can sustain it.
You have a 2-point lead over all the others. Amy MacDonald, will you begin the next round? Kenneth has just told us one of his best points was not his hair. Undoubtedly yours is, and that is the subject on the card, hair. Will you talk about that for just a minute, starting now?
Well, there are many different types of hair. Some is long, some short, some is thick, some is thin. Derek Nimmo has brown hair. I've got blonde hair. Kenneth Williams has got mousy hair.
I must explain to the listeners that Clement Freud challenged just before Amy MacDonald got to the description of his hair. And why do you challenge?
That was only one of the points.
Have you any others, very quickly?
Repetition of hair.
Yes, we did have too much. You can mention the subject on the card, Amy, but not more than about 3 times. I mean, 33 is a bit going it, isn't it? 45 seconds left for hair, Clement, starting now.
I used to have an abundant growth of hair. It was luscious, luxuriant, and covered right down towards a widow's peak. Shut up.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Shut up, deviation.
You're absolutely right, but I will score no points on that round because I think that Clement was put off by Kenneth's actions. So we continue with Clement. 30 seconds left, hair starting now.
When I was a small boy, it was fair, and it gradually grew darker until, in the end, it fell away. And I decided, in view of the fact that it was a necessary commodity, to allow it to continue to bud all over my face, cover my chin and my upper lip, which in common parlance is known as a beard and a moustache, and sideboards, which I now sport, to the general satisfaction of my entire family, who would in fact have me more hirsute than
Well, as Clement Freud is speaking, was when he gains an extra point, and he's now in the lead alongside Kenneth Williams. Clement Freud, it's your turn to begin, and the subject is getting up in the morning. Can you talk for just a minute on that, starting now?
Getting up in the morning is a fairly easy thing to do, especially if Amy MacDonald is trailing. What you do is you listen to the alarm clock, and when it finally finishes chirping, you brush the aforementioned female member
Kenneth
of the
Williams, why
panel.
have you challenged? Yes, I quite agree. He was getting a bit troubled by Amy MacDonald's thoughts he'd created, I think, at the beginning. So, Kenneth, I agree with you. You have a point, and you have 42 seconds left for getting up in the morning, starting now.
You rise in the early morn, the wing thoughts of clarity in the Milo, to that very quickly the ocean greases sparkles where the west for Ulysses, the subject here driven all the past line safely.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Well, the subject is getting up in the morning and not rubbish. Deviation.
Yes, I agree. This is rubbish. So, Derek, you have a point, and there are 36 seconds left for getting up in the morning, starting now.
Of course, I get up with the lark. When that little bird sings...
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Deviation.
Why?
It's nothing to do. He couldn't possibly get up with a lark.
I quite agree. It's a wonderful picture of Derek trying to get up with a lark. So I think it's such a delightful challenge. I must give you a point, Kenneth, and say there are 34 seconds left for getting up in the morning, starting now.
The best way to do this is fill your heart with hope, which, as Byron says, always sail on a snowy
Derek,
sea.
why do you challenge?
It's a poetry recital. Deviation.
He's talking about getting up, dear.
The poetry, it may be a poetry recital, but there's nothing in the rules which says you can't speak poetry.
No, there isn't, you see.
Kenneth has a point, and he continues the subject. 26 seconds, starting now.
Off with the pyjamas and into the bath and the tingling...
Derek, why have you challenged?
He's up.
In fairness, Derek, I will give it to you, because one has to give the benefit of the doubt occasionally, and this time it must come your way, and the audience obviously agree. 22 seconds left, getting up in the morning, starting now.
I lie there with my head on the pillow, and I think, is it time?
Clement, why have you challenged?
He's down.
Oh, it's really exciting, I think.
You can win a point for being up, you can win a point for being down. Clement Freud has a point, and there are 20 seconds left, starting now.
I raise my head slowly before slipping my legs over the side of the bed and gently pulling down my pyjama trousers. Then pushing up...
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Filth. Absolute filth. No excuse. Not getting up. Just
I wear a kilt under my pyjama trousers.
Now that would be devious.
But it wouldn't be filth.
I agree. I have to say, within the rules of the game, the Clement Freund has another point, and there are 8 seconds left for getting up in the morning, starting now.
A small tea-making machine ticks away while I'm in the process of rising from the sheets and pillows, blankets...
At the end of that hilarious round, Kenneth Williams and Clement Freud are equal in the lead, and Derek is just 1 point behind. And Amy's still in much the same position as she was before, but we are expecting great things now, Amy. A third tippet is the subject, and Kenneth, it's your turn to begin. 60 seconds, starting now.
This is something I believe the late Nellie Wallace made famous. She wore this thing round her neck. I think they are very attractive myself, but of course they're considered out of fashion in this...
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
I couldn't hear it.
You're not the only one. I couldn't hear it either. But you can't challenge for that, so I suppose Kenneth has another point.
It's repetition. I couldn't hear any of it.
He was definitely making a noise, so you cannot challenge for repetition.
It was a repetitious, unhearable noise.
No, you said you couldn't hear it, so you're challenging for repetition of silence, so therefore Kenneth must logically have a point. Whether it's fair or not, I don't know, but it's logical. So Kenneth has a point, and there are 45 seconds left for a third tippet starting now.
A third tippet really should be discussed by a lady or a couturier, put it that way, and not by a man. A man is hardly...
Clement, why have you challenged?
I said a man twice.
And Clement Freud challenged?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've got the buzzers wrong. Have I? Amy MacDonald, you challenged, did you?
Right.
Oh, was that right? Oh, Amy, I'm so sorry. The buzzers, ladies and gentlemen, listeners. Slight difference. I have a lot of buzzers here. Amy MacDonald, I'm delighted to know that you challenged for a repetition of man.
But I didn't.
Yes, well done, Amy. Well done. A very clever challenge. You were very observant. You got in very quickly that time. Now, Amy, the subject is a fur tippet, and there are 37 seconds left starting now.
Well, if I was the fur tippet, I'd like to be put on a very expensive coat. There I would lie across the shoulders in all my glory. And I would entice all the ladies walking down the street and looking at me through the shop window to come in and buy me. And I would have a very good home, and I would be worn such a lot with tremendous aplomb, and I...
Derek, why have you challenged?
Deviation. She's not a fur tippet.
But she did establish right at the beginning, if I was a fur tippet, this is what she'd do.
It doesn't it?
Was there a point?
Gives her a point.
Yes, indeed it does. Oh, how gallant these fellows are. Gallant, did I say? Well, they're also gallant and gallant. So, Amy, you ready to start, Amy? Good. Well, I'll give you the word. There are 11 seconds left. Fur tippet starting now.
Well, if I wasn't a fur tippet, then I would like to be a fur coat, because then I could put a fur tippet...
Well, challenge. Derry came in far too quickly there. It was very unfair. Very unfair. Because Amy was going to say that if she was a fur coat, she'd have a fur tippet on it. So there we are.
Of course.
Of course. So, Amy, you have 4 seconds left for a fur tippet starting now.
So, if I was this fur coat, you see, and I had this lovely...
Clement, why have you challenged?
Oh, repetition.
I haven't given her a point yet.
Well, in that case... Well, you've certainly given her one now with that disastrous challenge. So, Amy, you have another point. There are 1 second left for a fur tippet starting now.
Fur tippet.
As Amy was speaking as the whistle went, she gained yet another point, and I'm afraid that is the end, not only of the round, but also of this particular edition of Just a Minute. Amy MacDonald leapt up from 4th place into, believe it or not, 2nd place, alongside Derek Nimmo, and they are both equal in 2nd place. Now, and they are both in 2nd place because for the first time we have 2 winners, and only 2 points ahead of these two were a lovely couple. The inseparable couple on my right, whose romance has blossomed and gone through trials and tribulations until, on this particular edition of Just a Minute, they have come out hand in hand together, winners, with 2 points lead over the others. Congratulations to our joint winners.
Thank you. Thank you. On behalf of Ken, I thank you.
I'm sorry that's all we have time for, because we, once again, have really enjoyed playing Just a Minute. We do hope that you've enjoyed listening to it. Goodbye from us all. Goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by Simon Brett. We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Sheila Hancock in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, and welcome once again to Just a Minute, the game in which verbal dexterity is only outshone by verbal ingenuity. And here we have those 4 verbal intellectuals to play and show their verbal virtuosity. And I am going to ask them all once again to speak, if they can, for just a minute on some unlikely subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject in any way at all. And they will gain points according to how well they do this. Let us begin the game this week with Derek Nimmo. Derek, can you talk about false teeth for 60 seconds starting now.
It's a very embarrassing subject for you. I must confess, actually, I do happen to have a couple of little ones, rather, which I had knocked out the real ones when I was at school, and I then had a little plate made, which stuck in on two little wire hooks round the corners, rather, and then one day, I remember, I swallowed them, and I was sent home from school, and there were long, anxious moments while relations foregathered, waiting for them to reappear. Eventually...
Clement Freud has challenged. Why?
Repetition.
Of what?
Of the teeth, if they reappear.
I think that is one of those very clever challenges that I can award a point for cleverness, but as it's not truly within the context of the game, I will leave the subject with Derek Nimmo and ask him to continue for another 35 seconds on false teeth, starting now.
Well, when they finally came back, I gave them a good scrub and popped them in again. And after that, they were absolutely splendid for a long time. I remember going into the theatre, and I was in a play called Who Goes There? And one day I was on the stage, and I'd forgotten to put a bit of sticky stuff to keep them down, and all of a sudden they popped out again, and into a Busby that I was carrying on my knee at the time. And I spent a long time looking in the hair, trying to find them, turning upstairs. But finally they came back, and in I went. I remember another time.
Clement Freud, you've challenged again.
Repetition is the third time the teeth have come out and gone in.
Yes. He's definitely not only said they went in again, but he's also established they went in again. So, Clement Freud, I agree with your challenge. I give you a point. You take over the subject, and there are 11 seconds left for false teeth, starting now.
Well,
Oh.
Sheila Hancock,
Oh, dear. I thought he was hesitating, but he said it. No, because he always buzzes me for hesitation while I take a breath, so
Yes.
I thought I was going to try and do it for
I
him.
think, Sheila, considering how sharply Clement plays the game, you're absolutely right to try and get in there.
Yeah.
I won't give any points for that. I will just tell Clement that he has 10 seconds left for false teeth, starting now.
26 of my teeth are real, leaving 2 unreal or false. These are the top one on my left-hand side.
When the whistle goes, that tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that particular point gains an extra point. In this case, it was Clement Freud, who now, at the end of that round, has 3 points, and nobody else has any. Right. Clement Freud, will you begin the next round? Crossing the Channel. Will you try and talk for 60 seconds on that subject, starting now?
This is something which you can do on your own, swimming, or in a canoe, a paddle boat, a ship, a steamer, or even an aeroplane. The common routes are Dunkirk, Calais, Bourgogne, Cherbourg, Dover, Southampton. There's an...
Derek Nimmo, you've challenged. Why?
Hesitation.
I agree there was a hesitation, so Derek, you get a point and you take over the subject. 41 seconds left. Crossing the Channel, starting now.
Well, of course, I've always really wanted to try and cross the Channel with the Dardanelles, because I think you might get an awfully interesting hybrid if you achieved that. But apart from that, I think an awfully good way to go across would be in a little rowing boat, and I've got one which is called Snookums, which I keep down at Emsworth. And I have there 2 paddles, and I get into it, and I sometimes row out into the deep blue sea and think to myself...
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
You can't row a canoe. You paddle a canoe.
A very clever challenge of deviation, which I agree with. So, Clement, you have another point. And there are 19 seconds left for crossing the Channel, starting now.
I once went on a channel crossing expedition with a rugby supporters club. And it was astonishing to find that this was a very cheap outing, but not a single person on the trip was actually a aficionado of the game of...
Derek Nimmo, you have challenged again. I agree, there was hesitation. Derek Nimmo continues for 2 seconds on crossing the Channel, starting now.
Last time I went was in a hovercraft. It was like travelling the M1 in a thunderstorm.
As Derek Nimmo was speaking then when the whistle went, he gains an extra point. And now he is 1 point behind Clement Freud at the end of the second round. Kenneth and Sheila have yet to score, but there is plenty of time yet. Kenneth Williams, will you begin the next round? The subject is enthusiasm, and I'm sure you can expound most thrillingly on that for 60 seconds, starting now.
The word comes to us, as do so many in our language, of course, from Greece, and originally its connotation meant to be possessed by a god. In the 18th...
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Deviation, being possessed by a god.
People often colloquially say they are possessed by something, a god, a devil, or anything, and I think, therefore, it is not particularly devious, because it's an expression that is frequently used, so I can only say that Kenneth has a point, and he continues with the subject with 47 seconds left. Enthusiasm beginning now.
In the 18th century, it came to signify a lack of control emotionally. And in modern parlance, we understand it to be favoring a person or a cause. People do it about me. They say, oh, we're really enthusiastic
Freud, why
about
are you challenged?
you.
Clement, why have you challenged?
I've forgotten.
He was rather running down.
I remember
wasn't
it
he?
was a good challenge at the time, but
But the look, the withering look that Kenneth gave you, completely dried you up.
it's so early in the program, and I have to go on sitting next to him. You know.
Well, all right, as Clement forgot the challenge, all that happens is that Kenneth has another point and he continues with the subject. 23 seconds left for enthusiasm, starting now.
I frequently find it when they rush to me and cry out, oh, the enthusiasm that you arouse in us is unbelievable. It gives rise to such passions, uncontrollable urges. Yes, when you appear...
Sheila, why have you challenged?
Well, we've got to stop him, haven't we? Deviation.
Why?
Deviate. Well, all this kinky show. All this
Enthusiasm is the subject.
I know, all these uncontrollable urges that people have got about you. We don't
Have
talk
you ever
about
been to a
that.
football match? Have you ever seen enthusiasm at a football match?
But that's nothing to do with people having uncontrollable urges about you.
They have such uncontrollable urges, they bash people. That's all that happens.
I must
He's
say...
gone mad. He's gone mad.
No idea.
At last.
Kenneth,
He's gone right off his head.
I must say, Kenneth, that I've never heard a challenge received with such enthusiasm from the audience. And I've never heard anybody speak with less enthusiasm. But as I have to disagree with Sheila's challenge, because it's not within the rules of the game, the subject is still with you. And you have a point and 4 seconds left for enthusiasm, starting now.
Form a fan club, they cry, and let us write to you weekly every lock of your hair. Oh, for a treasure. To think of you, they say.
Well, as Kenneth was speaking when the whistle went, then he gains yet another point. He's
And has leapt into the lead.
and has leapt into the lead. Now, Kenneth, you are showing enthusiasm.
Oh, I'm red hot tonight.
Oh, dear.
I think the audience thought you were a bit tepid on enthusiasm. But
Would you like one of my tranquilizers, Ken?
You leapt into the lead alongside Clement Freud.
Ah.
Yes. And I've never heard anybody speak about a subject and yet illustrate at the same time so badly. But there we are. You're still in the lead, Kenneth. Sheila Hancock, your turn to begin. The subject is saving up, and we have now been saving up for Sheila, and it is your turn. 60 seconds, starting now.
This is something that now I am patently bad at, but when I was young, I was very good at it. My father was a very frugal man, and I used to have so much pocket money every week, above which sum he would not allow me to go. When I was very young, it was sixpence, and then I think it was increased to a shilling, all of which I had to work for. And out of that money, I had to save money for Christmas presents and birthday presents. So as soon as I had saved up for Christmas, I then had to start all over again for birthday. In fact, the whole of my youth was spent saving up, which probably explains why I'm an extremely extravagant person now. If I want something and if I have the money, I get it immediately. And this, I think, is why I will never teach my child to save up. Also, I save up my emotions. If I feel angry with somebody, if I dislike somebody, if I feel spiteful like I do towards Clement Freud, I am saving up for one dirty great scene in which I will tell him exactly what I think of him when he comes in the last few seconds of my thing, which he is waiting with his finger on the buzzer to do now. I will save up the biggest...
I know what you were going to say. I know what you were going to say.
That, Well, obviously, Sheila has been saving all that up for us for a very long time. That is the first time for quite a long time that somebody has started the subject and can finish with it without being interrupted. So Sheila gets a bonus point for speaking so successfully.
Brilliant, brilliant. Oh, good for you, girl. Good.
Derek Nemo, it is your turn to begin. The subject is giving a short address. Will you speak for just a minute on that, starting now?
Of course, it's tremendously advantageous to be able to give a short address. I found this particularly in the first months of my marriage when I lived in a caravan in a yard behind the Metropolitan Theatre in the Edgware Road. Now, when I used to go along to see casting directors and producers and so on, they would say to me, "Where do you live?" And I would say, "I live in the car park in the Edgware Road." And they would say to me...
Clement Froid, why have you challenged?
Well, we've had the car park.
We've had the car park, yes.
I said purposely yard, actually.
Yes, he did.
Yes, you're quite right. He said in the yard. Derek Nimmo has another point, and he continues for 40 seconds on giving a short address starting now.
Well, they obviously thought I lived under a bus or something, but it soon became the most sort of famous short address next to Buckingham Palace. And so when people had a job for a policeman or a chap carrying a spear or...
Kenneth Williams, it was a very good try, Kenneth, but Derek Nimmo has another point, because I disagree, and there are 30 seconds left for giving a short address starting now.
My lords, ladies, gents, it's very nice to be here today at the opening of your new home. What a lovely, tiny home, double time. Sorry, I've said it once.
Home, I quite agree. Clement, you take over the subject of giving a short address. 20 seconds left, starting now.
When I was 19 years old, I was passionate in love.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Deviation, he was never 19 years old.
Well, seeing what the age he looks now, we all have to believe he once was 19, so bad luck, Derek. All I can say is that Clement has another point, and there are 18 seconds left for giving a short address. Clement, starting now.
With a girl called Phillida Short, and one afternoon I took her down Oxford Street and decided that it was really time that she had a dress. We went in and looked at a number of fashions and
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Giving a short address, not giving a short dress.
No.
Well, I think we've established before that you can interpret the words in any way you wish. We can only take it from what you hear. And if it sounds like a short address or a short...
There you are, you see. That's what I'm saying.
I think you're right, Derek. Derek Nimmo has a point, and there are 5 seconds left, giving a short address starting now.
Hello, dear folks. Come round, brethren. Now's the time.
Freud, why have you challenged? Yes, I agree with the hesitation. Clement, there are 2 seconds left for giving a short address starting now.
My Lord Mayor, this is all I'm going to say.
And that was all that was necessary to give him yet another point and enhance his lead over Derek at the end of that round. Kenneth begins the next, and the subject is police women. Kenneth, police women starting now.
The subject immediately brings to my mind the picture of an actress who came on dressed as a policewoman and sang about it. And I remember she said, "When I draw me truncheon, nobody gets a strike. I'm ever so ladylike, ta-ra-ra." And I used to love to hear that song. Of course, like so much else, things have altered, and nowadays police women are not comic at all, and they arouse in us emotions which I would be hard put to it to define, but I will say they are staunch upholders of the morality which we all believe in and want to see upheld. And let me not be gainsayed. Let no...
Clement Freud, you have challenged.
2 left, yes. 2 left.
Why do you challenge?
He said I've repeated it.
Well, he hadn't actually repeated it.
When he said I repeated it, I pressed my buzzer. Seemed a natural thing to do.
Oh, well, it doesn't work, then I go on.
Well, this is, I must
I was sitting
ask
there with
it.
my hand
Look,
on the buzzer.
I must accept the first challenge. The challenge, he didn't challenge for hesitation. He challenged for repetition, and he hadn't repeated himself at that point. So Kenneth Williams has another point, and he continues with police women starting now.
How delightful they look, so beautifully tailored. I think that's a tremendous amount, to do with it. They do look nice. And when I've had occasion to actually go up and speak to them,
So as Kenneth was speaking once again when the whistle went, he gets another point. I must make this point clear that the first challenge that is given must be the one I must accept. And so Kenneth now is catching up on Derek and Clement, who are both still in the lead. Sheila, will you begin the next round? My first boyfriend. 60 seconds starting now.
I'm hard put to remember my first boyfriend, but I think it was when I was at school, at the grammar school.
Derek, why don't you challenge?
A rather injudicious challenge, but a hesitation, actually.
Yes, there was a hesitation, yes, but...
Go on, let him have it. I want to know who his first boyfriend was.
53 seconds, Derek, for my first boyfriend starting now.
When I was 5 years old, my first boyfriend's name was Ronald Bell. We used to cycle together in a little tiny tricycle thing. And then we used to have a motor car that we would sit in side by side, which was pushed by my sister, who was only one at the time, which doesn't entirely make sense. But still, that's something I can say. Now here's joined the
Sheila,
Merchant Navy.
Well, it is deviation. If she was one, she couldn't have pushed two hulking great boys on a tricycle. So he's lying. Deviation.
Well, you see, she might have been able to. We don't know. She might have been an Amazonian child, mightn't she?
Was she?
We ought to see her now.
Sheila, I will give you a bonus point for cleverness and leave the subject with Derek Nimmo. 31 seconds for my first boyfriend, Derek, starting now.
He has now joined the Queen's Navy, and he sails out from many harbours, and a gallant chap he is, always at the helm. He's a captain, as a matter of fact, pulling up and down the flag.
Clement Freud, why do challenge?
Deviation.
It sounds absolutely devious.
Well, you can't be the captain at the helm pulling out the flag. I mean,
It's a very small boat.
some sense of the demarcation issues of the Navy.
So the demarcation issues of the Navy give Clement Freud another point, and there are 21 seconds left, starting now.
My first boyfriend was called Nicholas Madison and beat me frequently. I used to come out of my dormitory and he stood there, having taken my shoes.
Derek Nimmo, why do challenge?
Well, deviation, if he was a friend and he had these sort of...
You should have seen my enemies.
So, Derek Nimmo has another point. Derek, 11 seconds. My first boyfriend starting now.
Ronnie has a wife now who lives in the Wirral Peninsula, and when he comes home from his trips, he goes to visit her, and I've been to their house.
Kenneth, why do you challenge?
Deviation. He's now talking about his friend's marriage with his wife. The whole point about the subject is my boyfriend.
Yeah, quite right.
He is quite right. Quite right. Kenneth won the point.
Actually, has Kenneth won the point?
Yes.
It's my first boyfriend. All right, Kenneth, you have the point. There are 4 seconds left for my first boyfriend starting now.
I met Bryn in Pontywydd in Wales, and up the mountain we went together.
Well, I tell you, my first boyfriend would have been a lot more interesting than any of theirs.
Well, you never got it out, did you? You never get it out.
Because you're all so rude, you interrupt me all the time.
Yes. Yes, you shout at her sometimes too. At the end of that round, all the chaps' boyfriends have given them points. And so that means that all the chaps are almost equal in the lead. Derek is 1 point ahead of the other 2. Derek Nimmo, will you begin the next round? The subject is taking notes. 60 seconds starting now.
Now, it's a very odd subject to give anybody taking notes, but if you mean to steal or purloin them, I'm not sure that I entirely approve. But I suppose the best way to go about it is to find somewhere where there is a great deal of paper money. Now, I give all my money to a very old established merchant bank. And when I go, I think that what I would do is to go along and see the manager, Mr. Brunswick, and I would say, meet him there, 10 to 9 in the morning, and say, hello, I've come to see you about my overdraft. I'm so surprised.
Clement, why have you challenged?
Deviation.
Why?
Banks don't open at 10 to 9.
I'm a robber, I'm a baddie. That's why I get there early, to shoot.
I agree with Clement Freud. I think that banks don't open. Derek had not established he was a robber. He doesn't look like a robber. He's never sounded like a robber. And I think that Clement Freud is probably right within the rules of the game, and therefore there are 27 seconds for taking notes. Clement, starting now.
This is something which at all board meetings is done by secretaries or people in similar positions. They do it with pencils and pens, reading what is said from pieces of paper, which are then filed away. Kenneth Williams is looking at me in such a manner that it's very different.
Well, deviation, he wasn't looking at me.
No, I'm afraid Derek's absolutely right. Kenneth Williams, I must tell the listeners, was not looking at Sigmund Freud. So it was deviation. So Derek has another point, and there are 12 seconds left for taking notes starting now.
In the decoy car waiting outside, I would have Ian Messiter ready with the whistle to blow in case...
Kenneth Williams' wife, you
Our
challenge.
deviation. This is nothing to do with taking notes.
Well, it could be, you see, if he was a robber. To my mind. He's now, in my mind, established that he is a robber, so he'd want a decoy, and he's got Ian Messiter's whistle. Therefore, I agree with Derek. And there are 7 seconds left for Derek to continue with it, starting now.
So I point my revolver in his face, and then I throw pepper at him, and I say, hand over your fivers, give me the £10 that you got hidden behind the till.
Derek's now got a lead of 2 over Kenneth and Clement. And Clement Freud, you begin the next round. The pleasures of hard work. Gosh, I sympathise a particular moment with that thought. And Clement, will you try and talk for 60 seconds on that subject starting now?
The pleasures of hard work are strictly limited, but the rewards thereof are considerable. Many people who work 40-hour weeks come home with a flush of realization and receive an amount of affection and love from their nearest and dearest which would make up for all the grime, humiliation, salesmanship, and sheer elbow grease.
Kenneth Williams, you challenge.
I'm sorry, I thought there was going to be a hesitation. It wasn't. I beg your pardon.
No, there was a hesitation.
He just said there was no hesitation. What sort of a chairman are you?
To use a phrase of yours, Kenneth, you are a fool to yourself.
Yes.
I've been trying to play the game very fairly, and you've retracted your challenge, so I must then give it to Clement Freud.
Right.
So Clement has another point. There are 35 seconds left for the pleasures of hard work, starting now.
I knew a woman who lived on the outskirts of Yarmouth, who worked in a pea planting processing factory, where every morning at 7:15 she arrived to sort out from runner beans and...
Kenneth Williams, your challenge.
Deviation. She could have been doing peas and running beans.
She did, you establish, she worked in a pea factory, so
Yes,
I
she had
don't...
to sort out the runner beans to get the peas. I mean...
No, you may be a great gastronome and a
Yes,
great authority
that's how I
and
could
astrology
tell.
and all these other things, but I think I know the difference between a bean and a pea.
Yes.
And I would not expect to see beans in a pea factory, especially if she was doing the sorting. So Kenneth
Yes.
has a point, and the pleasures of hard work is with you, Kenneth, and there are 21 seconds left, starting now.
I am certainly qualified to discuss this. I think it has a largely therapeutic effect. And when I'm scrubbing down the walls and singing a snatch of one of my favourite refrains, many people say, it's not very often you have to do it. Don't do that.
Well, that, I'm afraid, is all we have time for, and it means we've come to the end of this edition of Just a Minute with a very interesting result. First of all, congratulations to Sheila, because she's undoubtedly the best girl we've ever had on the show. She wasn't given much of a chance this week, but she's absolutely super, and thanks for coming along, and I hope you'll come back, Sheila. Congratulations. You were in 4th place, just. What about you? Clement Freud was in 3rd place, and he was only 1 point behind the winners. And once again, we have a draw. And once again, Kenneth is joining Derek Nimmo as the winner. Kenneth and Derek. A very keen contest at the end, and I think the chairman suffered most. But anyway, we do hope you've enjoyed this particular edition of Just a Minute. Goodbye from us all. Goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by Simon Brett. We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Deanne Hart in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And as you just heard, we welcome today to represent the ladies for the first time, Deanne Hart. I'm sure she's going to do jolly well against these three tough exponents of the game. And once more, I'm going to ask them all to try and speak, if they can, for just a minute on some unlikely subject without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject in any way at all. And according to how well they do this, they will gain points or otherwise. Anyway, let us begin with Clement Freud, and the subject, Clement, is astrology. Can you talk for 60 seconds on that subject, starting now?
Astrology is the knowledge of stars and the belief in signs of the zodiac, of which I don't really approve, because every now and then people come up to me and say, "When were you born?" And I say the 24th of April, to which they reply, "This means you are a Taurus, a bull, boorish, difficult, talented, brilliant, amazing, fantastic, realistic," and I'm afraid...
Deanne Hart, you've challenged. Why?
Deviation.
Why?
He isn't.
In this game, I hate to judge on people's personality or character. Sorry, Deanne, a very clever try. It means that Clement Freud has a point, and he continues with the subject with 33 seconds left for astrology, starting now.
Most newspapers have a column which is entitled Your Stars, and have a tame astrologer who tells people what is going to happen to them on this day, week, month, or even year. For instance, if you are born under the sign of Geminis, the twins, they predict...
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Repetition, twins.
That's one of those occasions when I definitely award a bonus point for cleverness, but actually within the rules of the game, it doesn't really count. So Clement continues with the subject, and there are 13 seconds left, starting now.
You are likely to meet a tall, dark, bald stranger who is probably wearing a wig and will accost you and promise you great riches and some travel. This is the sort of thing which...
When the whistle goes, it tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Clement Freud. He's at this moment being congratulated by the person he sits next to, Kenneth Williams. At the end of that round, Clement has a lead of 1 over all the others. Kenneth Williams, will you begin the second round? The subject is common sense. Can you talk common sense? For just a minute, starting now.
I have more of it than most people, and I think it manifests itself in valuation. Now, for instance, if you are offered something which patently, obviously, is not worth the price, if you have common sense, you reject it. You see.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Well, hesitation and deviation.
Hesitation, I agree. Derek, that means you get a point and you take over the subject, and there are 34 seconds left for common sense, starting now.
Now, every time I go to Wimbledon Common, I can sense it. Now, how I manage to do this is I stand on the road opposite to the right-hand fork which leads round the 2 ponds behind the fir trees, and I say to myself, there is a smell of conifers in the air. That means...
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Deviation. We're not talking about common sense.
I think that Derek was making out a very good case for having a sense about a common on which he was walking, and he had a very good sense that he was on Wimbledon Common. I got that picture. I'm sorry you didn't, so all I can say is Derek has another point, and there are 18 seconds left for common sense, starting now.
Common sense and plain speaking tend to go hand in glove and mouth to tongue. I do think that this is what this nation needs more of. If there was less blood...
Derek, will you begin the next round for us? The subject is frightening people. 60 seconds, starting now.
I suppose the most frightening person I've ever met is Clement Freud. I mean, you just have to look across at him with that awful grey, matted beard, filled with old bits of soup and carrot, and all down his horrible filthy clothes. And you can imagine facing a child with a sight like that. I mean, on a Sunday afternoon, strolling perhaps across Hampton Court. And then you would see. Yeah, thank you very much.
Clement Freud, you challenged.
Deviation, I've never been to Hampton Court.
We've only got your word for it. How do I judge?
I said imagine.
Yes, he imagined him in Hampton Court. So, Cleric Nimmo has another point, and there are 36 seconds left for frightening people starting now.
The best way of frightening people round is to put a big sheet over your head.
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Deviation, he said the best way of frightening people. I mean, he
established that you were the best way to frighten someone. All right.
Yeah.
To be fair now, as I wasn't sure before, I give you the benefit of the doubt and give you a point, and there are 33 seconds left for frightening people starting now.
Some of the most frightening people I have come across work in the theatre, especially in the musical branch of that profession, where they race after this performance, invariably asking me to give them a lift to the stage door.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Deviation, I never asked for a lift. He always offers me a lift so he can show off his new car.
To be perfectly fair, Derek, Clement had not established it was you he was giving a lift to, so I must be fair within the rules of the game and say Clement Freud has another point. 17 seconds left for frightening people, starting now.
There's also Derek Nimmo, who I find the most frightening
Derek Nimmo,
person.
why have you challenged?
Repetition, I'm sure I was mentioned before.
I just said you he didn't mention
No,
it
I still
before.
think he did, you see.
But
I
still.
still think he did.
Anyway, all that happens is that Clement has another point. Frightening people, Clement, 14 seconds, starting now.
With bristling toupee, loose, false teeth, snapping...
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Yeah, absolutely, Deviation. It's real. Look.
I'm not talking about Derek Nimmo. I'm talking about frightening people.
You see, this is the wicked thing
He
of this
said
chap.
Derek Nimmo.
He didn't. He said
heard it.
last time, Derek Nimmo, he started off again in quite a different tack about toupees and frightening people. So I must, within the rules of the game, say Clement has another point, and there are 11 seconds left for frightening people, starting now.
Alsatians, goats, and chipmunks are among animals that frighten people particularly, although I know a woman in Llandudno who is frightened by sheep. Blah.
Well, at the end of that round, as you can well imagine, that Clement Freud has taken a small lead over Derek. I do think Derek's having very bad luck, but the way the game's constructed, I feel I can't do anything else. Deanne Hart, will you begin the next round? The subject, very aptly for you, that Ian has chosen is feminists. Will you speak, and I'm sure you can, on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, feminist is a word that men always look at me and say, oh, you're a feminist, in a rather snide way, as though one is proud of it. And after all, why shouldn't one be proud of it? I mean, I can hardly be proud of being a man.
Derek Nimmo, you challenged.
Too much pride.
I'm afraid you did have a bit too. 3 times, 45 seconds left for you, Derek, on feminists starting now.
I always think of feminists as those big ladies that wander around in boots, tying themselves to railings, with bowler hats on and smoking pipes. They are the sort of people who always are going up with Mrs. Pangborn. I'm on the wrong station, I think.
Deviation.
Deviation, why?
She never went to the Isle of Wight.
So, Clement, you have a point, and there are 33 seconds left for feminists starting now.
I'm really in favor of feminists because they support women who are the best other sex that we have, and I would like to go along with that very much. There was a movement, I admit, about which my colleague, Mr. Nimmo, was trying unsuccessfully to cast our minds, in which...
Deanne, why have you challenged?
Well, he's talking about Derek Nimmo, which is not feminist, I hope.
It's a very clever challenge, Deanne, but I think he had established that Derek Nimmo was trying to cast our mind in that direction. I will give you a bonus point for cleverness, Deanne, and leave the subject with Clement, feminists, 7 seconds, starting now.
One of the most audacious attempts to bring this problem to the minds of the public was when a woman ran onto the racecourse at Epsom during the running of the Derby.
That very sad note did mean that Clement Freud had a point because he was speaking when the whistle went, and he now has a lead of 3 over all the others at the end of that round. Clement, it's your turn to begin the next round, and here's a lovely topical subject.
Oh, no.
The Loch Ness Monster. Clement, can you talk about the Loch Ness Monster for 60 seconds, starting now?
I got into my small submarine, went down to a depth of 43 feet.
Derek Nimmo, why have you challenged?
Deviation. Put to the audience whether you've got a small submarine.
I don't need to put it to the audience.
Yes.
But I do believe that he hasn't got a small submarine, so Derek, I definitely award you a point. And
I don't want it.
50 seconds left.
I don't want it.
For the Loch Ness Monster, Derek, starting now.
Well, there are all sorts of theories what really the Loch Ness Monster might be. I would like, of course, to think there really is a monster, and there may well be. A lot of people think it's beavers swimming tail to mouth.
Clement, why have you challenged?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, yes, there was. So his beaver's tail to mouth causes him to hesitate, and there are 40 seconds left for the Loch Ness Monster, Clement, starting now.
There was recently an American who commissioned a small naval craft which was submerged beneath the water, and in this he attempted to find whether or not such an animal existed. Finance.
Kenneth, why do you challenge?
Deviation. The American didn't actually get into it. He arranged for other people to do so.
Kenneth.
The man who did so was an American.
Kenneth, I'm going to say that you have a point for that. And because we haven't heard enough from you about the Loch Ness Monster, and the others are not very keen on the subject, and there are 27 seconds left, starting now.
This, of course, has never been proved to exist. We are left with some very blurred, dreary old photographs and some very wandering and garbled testimony from people who seem to me to be out of their minds half the time. But there you are. Mythology, of course, springs up around strange incidents. And recently, when somebody's chimney caught alight next to me...
Derek Nimmer, why have you challenged?
Well, deviation is talking about somebody's chimney that caught a long way from Scotland.
Yes, I think that chimney was a bit far from the old monster, don't you? I think it would have very soon gone out, too, if it had been smoking. Derek, I give you a point and 1 second left for the Loch Ness Monster, starting now.
In the Book of Revolution.
As you can see, once again, if you're clever enough to get in just before the 60 seconds is up, you can always get an extra point. Derek has got 2 more, but he's still 1 behind Clement Freud, who is still in the lead. Kenneth Williams, will you begin the next round? Something that I know you can talk about extraordinarily well, Kenneth. The finest human qualities. Will you talk to us about that for 60 seconds, starting now?
I can talk about them because I possess them. I would say the finest in the listing would have to be altruism. I think I am one of the most altruistic.
Clement Freud is challenged. Why?
Repetition.
No, I said altruism, and the second was altruistic.
Yes, he did.
Why don't you listen?
You didn't get it.
Actually, I'll tell you, Kenneth, he was listening so well, he anticipated the challenge, and he challenged you on altru.
Yes, that's
He
right.
didn't get the
did.
tistic
You see,
up,
that's
yeah.
right, what you said, Nick. You're
So,
right.
yes.
Don't mind me saying, Nick.
I don't mind what you say. You're liable to say anything at any time, so suddenly to apologise for saying Nick.
Well, I mean, the shortened version is a bit impertinent. One should say Nicholas, of course.
There are 45 seconds left for altru... No, they're not. 45 seconds left for the finest human qualities, starting now.
Then we would have to come to truth and goodness and beauty. Of course, I have all these 3. It's an abundance, or as some people would say, the embarrassment of riches.
Deviation.
You see, I'm embarrassed by my own riches, so to speak. I see he's hanging on my word.
Yes, one person was hanging on your words, but we're all waiting to find out what Derek's challenge was, actually.
Well, I wouldn't deviate. I wouldn't dispute goodness and beauty, but I would dispute truth. I think he's not truthful.
So you think
a little fibber.
That while you agree that Kenneth has many qualities and he has some in abundance, he hasn't got truth in abundance. And he's proved in this game because we have to be very untruthful sometimes at playing this game. So it's a very clever challenge, Derek. I give you a point and 33 seconds left for the finest human qualities, starting now.
Of course, I think, really, this is one of the subjects which one shouldn't treat too lightly. It's so easy to...
Deanne Hart, why have you challenged?
Hesitation.
Yes, he'd got so slow he had almost hesitated, hadn't he?
Yes, I think so.
Playing the game a bit too sharply once more. So, Deanne, you have a point, and you have 27 seconds for the finest human qualities, starting now.
Well, I don't think I've ever met anybody with the finest human qualities. And the way Clay Freud's looking at me from over there, I don't think I'll live long enough
Clement Freud, why have you challenged?
Deviations.
Why?
Got nothing to do with finest human qualities.
You haven't got anything to do with the
look-
finest human
The way I'm looking at her has got nothing to do with fine human
It
qualities.
might have.
Well, you're so sexy, it put me off.
Oh, well, in that case, yes.
I was going, before Deanne came out, I was going to say that she had actually endowed Clement with different human qualities, because we do believe he has some. So, Deanne, you have a point, and you have 17 seconds left for the finest human qualities starting now.
But I live in hopes that one day I shall meet a gorgeous man who's tall and beautiful and...
Derek Nimley, why have you challenged?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, yes, there was. She got stuck on this chap. She got this image in her mind and couldn't go any further.
Quite right.
Derek, you have another point and 9 seconds left for the finest human qualities starting now.
Finest human qualities are set out very clearly in St. Paul's letter to the Corinthians, chapter 13, when he says, "Though I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, and I have not love..."
The words of St. Paul there, quoted by Derek, means that as the whistle went, he gets another point, and he now has a lead of 2 at the end of that round. Over all the others, of course. Derek, will you begin the next round? Keeping the peace. This is a subject I should talk about for 60 seconds, really, isn't it? Anyway, Derek, will you try starting now?
It's curious that you would ask me to speak about keeping the peace, because it reminds me of something which I'm not terribly proud of. A few months ago, I was staying at a house in Lincolnshire, and after dinner one evening, we sat down to play a game of chess. And I started off with the interesting game, Sally.
Cleanne, why have you challenged?
Repetition, he started off twice.
Yes, he did. Yes. True. Yes, he never got caught, did he? 43 seconds for you, Deanne, on the subject of keeping the peace, starting now.
Well, there is a piece which people keep, which I think is absolutely disgusting. And somebody I know had a child who had one of these, and she called it a sucky blanket, which apparently the child wouldn't go to bed without...
Derek, you're challenged. Why? Hesitation. Deanne, you've got to keep going, even, the risk of repeating yourself, because otherwise you get had for hesitation. Derek, you have another point, and 23 seconds for keeping the peace, starting now.
The chessmen were of the finest ivory construction, inlaid with gold and mother of pearl. They had come from India and been brought by my friend's grandfather some little time before. When we started this interesting game, the funny thing happened was that I said check, and therefore I was able to take his queen's bishop.
Kenneth Williams, why have you challenged?
Well, it's totally devious. Nothing to do with keeping the peace.
All right, then.
What happened was that I took the bishop, I put it into my pocket by mistake, and kept the peace.
Yeah, but you've taken such a long time to...
I was telling you the story.
Yeah, but it took you so long to get there. It was utterly devious on the way. So Kenneth has another point, and there are 3 seconds left for keeping the peace, Kenneth, starting now.
It is the duty, of course, of the police to keep the peace, and a marvellous job they do.
Well, as Kenneth was speaking when the whistle went, then he gains an extra point, and he's now in 3rd place behind the other 2. Derek is still leading. Deanne, will you begin the next round? The subject is serendipity. Can you talk on that strange subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
I don't think I can talk about it at all, frankly. I think, as far as I remember, it's discovering something by accident and being very happy about it. Well, once I had a baby. That's not what was the serendipity about it. But I was offered a play, and I said to the specialist, may I go and rehearse next week? And he said, no, of course you can't. I mean, you've just had this baby. So I said, well, I can't pay you.
Clement, why have you challenged?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, alas, there was. Yes, there was a repetition of the baby, too.
Yeah, I
wasn't
know.
there? Anyway. And those who know that Diane has actually repeated that process. She has 2 children. But anyway.
That was serendipity.
Well said, Diane, well said. 30 seconds. Clement has another point. 30 seconds left for serendipity, Clement, starting now.
Serendipity is a quality which I have in abundance. You only have to see my family, my aunts and uncles, my loving mother, and my well-intentioned father who used to beat me unmercifully when I was small. And
Diane, why have you challenged?
Not serendipity if he was beating him.
No, it wasn't.
No.
Indeed, no.
I'm a masochist.
Ah. Well, yes,
And
it
we've
was
already
then.
established those wonderful human qualities that you had earlier on, so you can't be a masochist and have wonderful human qualities. So Deanne has another point, and there are 14 seconds left for serendipity starting now.
So anyway, this specialist let me go to work, but my tummy stuck out.
Clement, why have you challenged?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, unless your tummy was hesitating you. There are 10 seconds left for you, Clement, on serendipity starting now.
3 of us running down a beach in Suffolk one summer.
Derek Nimmer, why have you challenged?
Repetition, 3 of them.
I think that's one occasion, and the audience agree, where I give a bonus point for cleverness. Leave the subject with Clement. 8 seconds left. Serendipity starting now.
And the sun shone, and a circus had moved into the nearest town, and the £10 note stuck on the roundabout.
In spite of that, Derek, you still have a lead at the end of that round. It's only 1, but Kenneth Williams, your turn to begin again. Having a field day. You have one regularly in this show, Kenneth, so think about that thought and talk for 60 seconds on it, starting now.
Well, of course, one's mind automatically connects with fields when the expression is used, and I have done 1 or 2 things in fields, none of which I would really recount with very much zest. On the other hand, camping has figured largely in my activities, and I remember when we had to do these outside latrines and erect these mesh things all round, you see, so that people could do it without undue prodigality, as they say. And there we were, and the scout...
Clement Freud challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, it's a full stop. Clement, you now take over the subject with 21 seconds left for having a field day starting now.
This is really one of my favorite ways of spending an afternoon. I run around touching a leg here, gripping an arm there, embracing a woman, perhaps...
Kenneth Williams, why have you...
Deviation's a load of filth, isn't it? Running around feeling ladies' legs, honey.
But that's the question. That's the subject.
What?
Field day, feeling people's legs.
The field day.
The idea of you, Clement, running around touching a
field
leg...
day.
Well, I haven't come along here to listen to things like that.
So at the end, having had all that touching, you say, I've really felt today. So what do we
That's
do?
what I call
It's
a
a very
field day.
clever interpretation of the word, isn't it? I have to play the
told you he
game.
was
So
sexy.
Clement Freud has another point, and 6 seconds for having a field day starting now.
With my hand stroking the small of her back, and her hand touching...
Derek Nimmer, why...
Really, I mean, it's absolutely disgusting. Can't let him carry on stroking small back.
Absolutely agree, Derek.
Filth up and down the legs and everywhere he's been.
We cannot let him go on any
Disgusting.
longer. All right. We
Well,
can't let
can
him
I go and sit beside him then?
No, you can't. He's already booked.
He's
actually.
already got Kenneth Williams beside him. And we can't go on any further with
No,
Clement
we can't.
Freud's feeling days. So, we have 1 second left for you, Derek, on having a field day starting now.
Having a field day.
We, alas, have come to the end of Just a Minute. It's alas because perhaps we should have finished on a rather more note of better tone. But let me tell you the result. Deanne Hart was just in 4th place, just behind Kenneth Williams was in 3rd place. Derek Nimmo was way ahead of them both in 2nd place. And Clement Freud's activities in that field, which we do not wish to dwell any further upon, gave him a lead at the end of the last round and makes him the winner this week. Clement Freud. We do hope the audience here, in the nicest sense of the word, have a field day. And we hope the listeners may have had a field day listening to the show. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The program was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by Simon Brett.